you'll see, hopefully your name is in the corner of your screen. If it isn't, you can change it. So please click on those three dots and do that for me. It just would be great to know who we're talking to today. If your audio settings don't seem quite right, please click on your microphone. The arrow at the side of your microphone will help you just reset those settings for you. And today your microphone and camera will be switched off, but you will have the opportunity to chat with us through the chat function, which many of you are already using. Or if you have questions, specific questions, really from the panel onwards today, I really recommend that you use the Q&A button below for those questions. So just remember, chat box to chat and Q&A if you've got any questions that you want to ask. And you will have the opportunity to upvote on questions today. So if you see some fantastic questions that you want to be asked, they will rise to the top of the list and we'll make sure we do what we can to answer those. Okay, so just really quickly, a couple of other items. You can control your view. You should be in gallery view. That's the view that I'd recommend. We are recording the meeting, just so you know. So this will be sent to you later this week. And just one more item, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there is some live transcripts, and you can just select the button below to turn that off. Okay, so just to make you aware. Okay, there's one more thing I just want to share with you before we start, and that's our competition today. So we do have a competition running. Your chance to win £100 not on the high street voucher. That's pretty exciting. And all you need to do is this. You need to take a selfie today with the Choose to Challenge pose for International Women's Day. Post it on social media using one of the form platforms below, or you can post on all four. Use the hashtag Breaking Barriers 2021 and Choose to Challenge, and put on your post just one takeaway at least that you've took from any of the sessions today. I hope you take away lots of new ideas that you can go on and share with your network, but really would love to hear one thing at least that you've took away from today's sessions. So please, throughout the day, just keep posting on social media and we'll be picking a winner tomorrow. Okay, so there is a mailbox that's designed for the event today, which is sayhello@ehi.com, and that will be shared throughout the day. So if you have any specific questions for the event, please send us an email. We're more than happy to help. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ashley Heaver, Talent Acquisition Director for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and Judith Baines, Head of Careers and Employability at the University of Hertfordshire. Over to you, Ash.
Perfect. Thanks, Claire. And thank you for that great introduction. It is amazing to see all of these comments and to everyone telling us where across the globe they're coming from today. So we are so excited to be putting on this event. So thank you for joining our first ever virtual International Women's Day event. And as Claire said, our theme for this year is breaking barriers. Now, I'm extremely nervous, worried and panicked, but not about the opening, but just hoping that the technology is on our side today, and also hoping that we can get through this afternoon without those dreaded 3 words, you're on mute. And so excited that Claire asked me to open up the event today. So I'm going to be celebrating 20 years with the business at the end of this month. And for the last 15 of these, Enterprise has been named as one of the top 50 employers for women. In fact, we are one of only 5 graduate recruiters that are in the High Flyers Top 100 to be listed in the Social Mobility Index, the top 50 for women, and a Stonewall 100 champion. And I'm really hoping that throughout the day and the sessions, you will start to get an understanding and really look at some of the reasons why. So my name's Ashley Heaver. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition here at Enterprise and also chair our LGBTQ+ network, Enterprise. And I'm joined this afternoon by Judith Baines, who I've worked with for many years. And Judith is the Head of Service and Employability at the University of Hertfordshire. And we are here to introduce the event today. So why are we doing this event? Well, International Women's Day is marked annually on March the 8th and is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. Significant achievement activity is witnessed worldwide as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements or rally for women's equality. International Women's Day also offers a good opportunity to reflect on how far we've come and how far we have to go when it comes to equality between the sexes. For example, only 29% of MPs are women. 25% of judges are women, and only 24% of FTSE 100 directors are women. I am proud and want to point out at this point that our president and CEO of Enterprise, I'm proud to say, is Chrissy Taylor, and she was recently named globally as one of the top women in travel and hospitality this year. And our vice president for HR in the UK and Ireland, Lee Lefevre, was also named as one of the top 30 most influential women in the automotive industry this year. Despite the positive story that women enter higher education in greater numbers than men and go on to achieve higher degree outcomes than men, a report, Mind the Graduate Gender Pay Gap, published late last year, found that before the pandemic, female graduates experienced a 7% pay gap 1 year after graduating and grew to an astonishing 24% after 10 years. The report also showed women were less likely to show confidence in their approach to job hunting, with the Student Academic Experience Survey showing that 60% of men feel prepared leaving university compared to 52% of women. So what happens when we look at the workplace? Women still occupy the lowest paid jobs. 3/4 of people who've done minimum wage jobs in the last 10 years are women. Working women earn 81p for every pound a man earns. And at the current rate, it will be 70 years before that gap eventually closes. We still have a long way to go, which is why we have events like this one today. But this cannot be a one-off event. It has to be something that we think about every day. Think about the Janet Jackson song, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" We have to support women every day and not just on International Women's Day. And I know that I have a role to play in forging gender parity as a man. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. As with challenge comes change. The sessions today will address those invisible barriers that can hold us back. At Enterprise, we recognise the importance of gender parity. When Jack Taylor founded our company in 1957, the 8 values of the company were formed. One in particular refers to our doors are open. Back then, the importance of a workforce that mirrors the communities we operate in was highlighted. Those organisations with a diverse workforce generate the best ideas, identify opportunities, and allow us to lead as the biggest mobility provider in the world. At Enterprise, we typically host events internally throughout the year to develop our employees to challenge bias and overcome barriers to progression. This year, we felt it important to repurpose our content and partner with our student network. The last 12 months have been tough. Women in the workforce have especially struggled as they try to balance childcare commitments with work. And did you know that mothers were 40% more likely to have permanently lost their job or resigned as a result of COVID-19? Today's sessions are designed to maintain and raise your aspirations as you finish your education and enter the workplace, and help develop those of you who have had such a tough year. I hope you walk away with some great action steps and will really get involved and take part in our post-event activity. We reached out to our university partners and Enactus UK and Ireland, who have partnered with this on this event, members, to identify what students would like to see at such an event, hence this afternoon's agenda. So thank you to everyone that has worked so hard to put this event together, and for all of the support we have had marketing the event from partners such as Target Jobs, Rate My Placement, My G Work, My Plus, and all of the great support that our universities, schools and colleges have really helped us ensuring that we were able to get the audience we've got today. Thank you to our team and the enterprise team for organising today and bringing together some great panels and sessions. And most of all, thank you for choosing to attend this event this afternoon. I'm now going to hand over and have the pleasure of passing it over to Judith to hear a few words from her. Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
You can, sorry, I just got a message on the screen, sorry. Yeah, okay. Okay, so thanks, yes, thank you, Ashley. Thank you for inviting me to help introduce this great event today. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the speakers, and it's a privilege to speak to you all. As Ash said, I'm Head of Careers and Employment at the University of Hertfordshire, and I've been working within that area across different universities for around 22 years now. And I'm passionate about equality, diversity and inclusivity. And we have a student population of 53% Black, Asian and minority ethnic students, and 42% first in the family to go to university. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background, really. So I had a really early introduction to equality issues and aspirational role models via my grandmother and my mum. So my gran was a very bright woman, but she left school at 12 years old and went into service, working as a maid in the big house, as she used to say to us. And that actually was quite usual for girls for working class backgrounds. And I watched the original Mary Poppins film with her, where I was introduced to my first suffragette, Winifred Banks, the mother in it. And I loved her as much as I loved Mary Poppins. So they became two more role models to add to my gran and my mum. But after watching it, my gran told me about Jenny Baines, which is my surname Baines, who began working in a factory age 11, but went on to be one of the first suffragettes to advocate militant methods and was imprisoned 15 times, campaigning for women's rights until she died in 1951. And me and my gran like to think we were related to her, and we may well have been, because it's not a common name, Baines, so I'd like to think so. But my mum was very unusual in going to university. She graduated in 1953 when only 5% of graduates were in fact women. Now you're in the majority, so it's 57%. But there was no careers advice back then, and the established pathway, the advice when you were a woman, was go to teacher training college, learn to type or get married. And she went on to be a teacher of the deaf and then got married. But she was, and still is at nearly 90 years old, very proud of being a graduate from that time. Fast forward to me in 1982-83, thinking about what to do after sixth form, and there was still no careers advice for me, just advice from well-meaning family and friends. And it was pretty much the same. So go to teacher training college, learn to type, or train to be a librarian. So at least 30 years later, the advice to get married had actually disappeared. But I didn't want to do any of those things at the time. I just wanted to be in a band or be a fashion designer. And my role models were Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees, and Debbie Harry and Vivienne Westwood. But I just didn't have the talent, or I have to say the looks when you think about Debbie Harry. So off I went to university and didn't use the careers service, which was in fact available to me at Newcastle. So I just didn't use it, graduated, and then I actually learnt to type, and then I ended up in education and being passionate about women's rights. So the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree, really, since I ended up being quite similar to my mum. But it's leads me back to my role as head of careers, and a really strong belief that you can only aspire to be what you can see. So part of my role is to make visible to you a wide range of career options and to help you make choices to take your first step into the world of work, whether that's working for a company or working for yourself. A survey by the Institute of Student Employers most recently said around 80% of employers did not specify a degree subject. as part of their criteria for a graduate programme. So in many ways, there's almost too much choice out there for you to make a decision on. So very similar to a lot of universities, we arrange panels of speakers, getting them to talk about their experiences, and we arrange site visits to employers, guest lectures, speed networking events where you can meet 40 employers in 90 minutes, and shadowing schemes. And many other career services run the same events, things like mentoring schemes, but so much more than that as well. When we all went home last March, at first we found it very difficult to run all our interactive events online. So we went back to what our students told us they wanted. And time again, they've said they want to see people they can relate to, role models and inspiration speakers that had come from similar backgrounds to the ones that they had. So as part of Black History Month and preparing months ahead for today, International Women's Day, the team collected about 90 case studies from our alumni to inspire our current students, particularly during, it was just such a difficult time last year. And we were really struck by the common themes in the case studies and the excellent advice that our alumni gave our students. So it was build supportive networks, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, be proactive, take every opportunity, create your own opportunities. And resilience came up a lot, and perseverance even in the face of rejection, and going the extra mile because it will get noticed. And the women in the case studies also commented a little bit more about reaching out to other people, not being afraid, not being alone, and asking for support and advice when needed. And career services can actually support you with all of these issues. We're certainly there when you need support and advice, whether you have no idea where to start or you know what you want to do. And we're there to help you, support you during recruitment rounds to impress employers. So there's so much more than where to get your CV checked, which is often what people do think we're there for. So we can give advice on how to reach out and create networks, how to build a proactive job search, building your brand, self-awareness, career resilience, assertiveness, and just so much more than that. So I just want to finish by saying you're all here today in a supportive, celebrating network, and you're actually taking action already by listening to today's inspirational speakers. So besides using your career service whilst at university, which I think is really important, I just have one piece of advice. So surround yourself with energy angels rather than energy vampires. So people who bring you up and raise you up and energize you rather than people who bring you down and drain you. And champion and celebrate yourself and your successes and those of other women at all times. So back to you, Ashley.
Perfect. Thank you, Judith. And that's why me and Judith get on so well. We're both energy angels. So again, Judith, thank you for supporting our event today. And if for those people, and Judith spoke a little bit about some of the blogs that her students had done, I'd really, encourage you to take a look on LinkedIn and social media, because there's some really powerful and great stories that you can see there. And as Judith said, make sure that you're using your career service and making most of what they can do and offer to you. So I am really excited about the first session you're going to listen to today. And this is the second time that I've actually had the pleasure of being able to introduce Hayley. I've known Hayley for a few years and have learned so much from her over these years, and continue to learn every day by, again, following some of her amazing social media work. Now, Hayley Bennett is a multi-award winning equity, diversity and inclusion consultant and campaigner. Hayley is well recognised as a thought leader in her field and has been featured in The Times, Metro.co.uk and The Washington Post. Her passion for inclusion in sport led her to create Nutmegs, a football community for women of colour and non-binary people of colour. In 2020, she was named as one of the most influential Black people in football. Hayley is going to be talking about breaking barriers and sharing the things that other women have taught her along the way. So over to you, Hayley. And again, thank you for being a part of today's event.
Oh, thanks so much, Ash. Yeah, you're definitely an energy angel. I was going to say that. I love that. Thank you for having me, and thanks for everybody who has tuned in. I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. I've just got a few slides that I wanted to share with you, so you don't have to just stare at my whole face the whole time. So, being true to myself, I've chosen to use the time we have together on International Women's Day to amplify some other women's voices that have inspired me along the way. So I'm going to be sharing some lessons that they have taught me with the hope that they'll be able to teach you something too. And as the theme of the event is breaking barriers, I started to reflect and think deep and hard about some of the barriers that I faced along my career. And it wasn't actually as easy as I thought. Some of them are really obvious. And some of these examples that I came up with were barriers that other people have put in front of me or society has put in front of me too. So whether that is starting out being one of only 8 girls in an all-boys school and just surviving, being named as one of the most influential Black people in football for the work that I've been doing to champion diversity and inclusion in that space, but also behind the scenes, pursuing a dream of creating a children's book that inspires more girls to get involved in sport, despite being told by publishers and, you know, major publishing houses that the idea wasn't marketable because women's sport's not popular enough yet. But what I realised when I was doing this reflecting is that a lot of the barriers that I have faced are also barriers that I've actually put up for myself. So I have never actually wanted to go to university, and that was something that I always said. And maybe that's because my parents hadn't gone to university, they still ended up being really successful, but I just didn't feel like it was for me. Despite that, I really did push hard and I tried to do as well as I could. And I managed to get into my top choice university. I actually lecture now at the University of Bolton, and I've been published as an academic too. So it just goes to show that that was a bit silly for me to think in my teenage years. But when I was at university, I actually struggled quite a lot with my mental health, to the point where I honestly didn't feel like I'd become anything. So the fact that I'm here speaking to you all today is quite weird and surreal for me, but a pleasure. One of the reasons why I felt that way was because, like many of you may be in this position now, I had spent a lot of time applying for jobs and I wasn't getting anywhere. In fact, I remember I applied to 259 jobs unsuccessfully. And I remember that number because I kept a spreadsheet that still haunts me to this day. But just when I was at my lowest point and I wanted to give up, I landed my dream job in football, and the rest is history. So I wanted to start off by sharing a couple pictures of you to illustrate my journey so far. So the top picture, I'm standing next to my favourite teacher in the boys' school. This is actually the end of my time at the school. What you can't see from the picture is that I'm trying to hold 7 prizes. So at the end of the term, we always used to have like a prize day, and I won the most prizes in the whole school by quite a long way, actually. So I guess you could say I not only survived the boys' school, I actually won it. The picture of all of us at Wembley, you can see me there surrounded by some amazing women. That was one of the first ever events that we had for Nutmegs. It meant so much for me to get us into the national stadium, to do something incredible and get a lot of these women to experience football for the first time, which was always my dream. The bottom picture is an almost unrecognisable me. So this is me on my first ever week of work. And I couldn't believe it that I'd been able to turn up and go to West Ham's old stadium. So as you follow football, you'll recognise the Boleyn ground in the background. And it was a massive moment for me to realise that actually my dreams could kind of come true. Now, I'm definitely one to downplay my accomplishments, but a lot of this has come through, perseverance, my passion, and just to be honest, resilience around the barriers that I faced along the way. But I think what today is all about, and what I wanted to share with you, is that I couldn't be where I am today without the help of some amazing women who have guided me at key moments, but continue to guide me every day. So I wanted to share some of those lessons with you. And it wouldn't be right if I didn't start off today by sharing with you some advice from my mentor. So my mentor is called Michelle Moore. This is one of her favourite sayings, stand in your light. And I'm pretty sure she would have been saying this to me right now, because every time she gears me up to do something like this is something she'll always say. And what she means by this is you've got to be bold and you've got to be fearless when the light is on you or when your time has come. Now, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, or being one of the youngest people in a team, or just simply be in a room with people who don't look anything like you, it can be really, really daunting. And there's definitely been moments where I've had to battle with my own inner voice telling me that I need to change myself to get ahead, or I'm not good enough to be where I am. And actually, along the way, I've been told this by other people, normally people who are more senior than me, more experienced than me, that are telling me that I need to maybe change how I talk, change how I dress, or even change my hairstyles to fit in or to do better. And what's really interesting about this is actually, now I run my own business, probably the most common piece of good feedback that I hear from my clients is that they like my authentic and real approach. So I've really learned to sharpen and be myself. But Deloitte research actually tells us that almost half of people in workplaces take part in covering. Now, what they mean by that is that people downplay their differences to fit into a dominant culture. So I wanted you to think about whether you've actually ever felt that you have to cover who you are, change who you are to fit in, either in work or in education, because it is something that we are subtly told to do and something that we expect of ourselves too. So have you ever had to do this? As women and as people from marginalised identity, covering is actually necessary for survival a lot of the time in organisations. Sometimes we're told to cover. A piece of research that always shocks me is that 2/3 of people from ethnic minority backgrounds have been told to change their names in order to get ahead in their careers. And that's just outrageous and shocking, and it still happens today, and it's very common actually. But covering, it doesn't only prevent us from just flourishing as our authentic selves, it can be really, really tiring actually. So along the way, just to, save some energy, it's something that I've tried to stop doing as much as I can. And showing up as yourself is something that empowers others and it enables others to sharpen themselves too. So this is something that I always try to do, especially when I'm working with people who are early on in their careers or less experienced than me. But let's be realistic. The work that I do as a diversity and inclusion consultant shows me that there are actually a lot of organisations out there who encourage their employees to cover and to hide their authenticity in the workplace. Those companies are people who are missing out on the benefits of diversity and inclusion. Research has actually shown that being authentic improves productivity, it improves performance, and it even leads to greater success. So what I would say to all of you is, when it comes to breaking barriers, the best thing you can do is be your authentic self. The power of being different is that you actually bring something different to the table. So as many employers know, and part of the reason why we're here today, I've done a lot of work with enterprise and they definitely live by this, is that diverse teams outcompete non-diverse teams. So employers want someone who's different and they want someone who's going to be different to be able to thrive in their organisation. So I have done a bit of reflecting with you today. I want you to do a bit of reflecting too. So I wanted to ask you this question. We always think about what we could potentially lose or miss out of if we hide who we are, if we're not authentic. I want you to think about what could you gain from being your true self. Now, this might be at an interview, maybe you're already working. What could you actually gain from being your true self and letting a bit more of yourself show? So I'd be keen to hear some of your thoughts in the chat if you're willing to share that. My second piece of advice or lesson that I learned, it's an interesting one because this is something I've known all my life. As you can imagine, I'm somebody whose career revolves around this very notion. But this is something that I learned as a lesson at one of the lowest points in my career, actually. And it's this, that we need to advocate for all, not just those who experience the same barriers as we do. So at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, most of you would have been aware that there was this huge call for allyship. And I guess this is what I'm talking about, being an ally and recognising the barriers that other people face. Gender pay gap data in the UK tells us that more than 3 out of 4 UK companies pay their men more than their women employees. Ash gave us some amazing stats at the beginning today. In 9 out of 17 sectors in the economy, men earn more than 10% than women on average. But what's interesting is if you look deeply into this data, it tells us that for disabled women, this is as large as 18.9%. LSE also recently found out that whilst all women experience huge differences in pay and representation in top jobs, it is Black women who have the lowest probabilities of being top earners. So for me, true allyship comes from taking risks and recognising this. In a career-defining moment of my own life, this is a lesson that I was taught because I was experiencing discrimination in terms of how I was being treated as as being the only person of colour in my team. And I suspected that I was being treated differently in terms of my pay as well. And my suspicions were actually confirmed by a white woman who showed allyship to me by revealing that my suspicions were correct. I was indeed getting paid 15% less than her, despite her thinking that she thought I should be being paid more than her. Now, at that moment, a lot of things are going through my head. I remember thinking I need to get the hell out of here and move on to bigger and better things. But it taught me that the reality as well is that sometimes some barriers we can't break down on our own. We actually rely on the actions of allies. And I remember when I received my award from the Football Blacklist last summer, I was given a platform by a national newspaper. And I remember thinking I need to use this platform in the best way that I can. And I chose to use that platform to advocate for the rights and inclusion of trans people in sport. It's now more important than ever that we show up and we stand up and support people who need it. So my challenge for you and my reflection question for you is a bit like what Ash mentioned earlier. What have you done for others lately? What will you commit to doing to support others to break barriers? In an industry or a job where you're facing your own barriers, sometimes you can feel demotivated. Sometimes it can feel like you want to give up. The best thing that you can do is to think about all the other people who you might be able to help along the way. So don't just do this for you, do it for others as well. This is something that I have been spending a lot of my time talking about with employers since the death and the killing of George Floyd last summer. In terms of my tips for you around how you can be a better ally, whether that is for people who come from a range of different backgrounds to you, I think the key thing is around speaking up when you need to. If you're given an opportunity or a platform, use your voice. And second of all, educate others. It's very likely that you'll come across people in your careers who don't have open minds, who might not have knowledge around certain subjects that you do. So use that, educate people and use your platform, especially if you're somebody who's not experiencing the issues and the struggles that somebody else might be. So my third and final lesson to share with you is a lesson that I've learned from my mentees, so the people that I mentor. And these are some of them. I've just noticed in this slide, my hair is different in every picture, but I can confirm it is me. And I can also confirm that I miss getting my hair done and changing my hair like we probably all do. But these are some of my mentees who are inspiring me all the time. They have taught me to never underestimate the impact that you are having on others. People are watching what you do, even if you don't realise it. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean that as women in 2021, we're still blazing a lot of new trails for women to follow in our footsteps. And I've been surprised whenever Tosin, Tyra, or Mara have told me just how much I've helped them through a difficult time, or when they thanked me when they've gone on to do something amazing. Most of the time, I've just not even understood what I've done to support them. With the companies that I work with, I tell them all the time about the need to amplify the stories of role models. There is an overused but true phrase that you can't be what you can't see. And this is definitely the case, but it is a lot deeper than that. There are, having a lack of role models for people from marginalised communities means that they can often feel like they don't belong. And there's definitely been times when I felt like this. Research says that 81% of women believe that having a role model helps raise aspirations, but 55% of people say that there's not enough role models to actually choose from. So I'm curious, and I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Do you have a role model? Now, this might not be somebody that you've met. It might be somebody who's famous or somebody that you've read about, or is it somebody who's very real or someone who's part of your life? For me, there's actually only 5 Black women on 415 sports boards in the UK. So there's not that many people that I can inspire to emulate, which is one of the reasons why I set up my own organisation. Not having somebody to relate to can feel quite lonely, and it can actually force you to cover or to hide your authenticity. It can feel quite isolating being the only person that looks like you, especially if you are a woman entering a male-dominated industry. But the way that I've actually overcome this is by finding some role models, finding people who can support me, but actually as well, finding people who might be earlier on in their journey or even at a similar stage that I can give that peer support to. So even if you feel like you're at the beginning of your life as a student, there's always people that you can connect with, whether that's on LinkedIn or even today, there'll be people that you can chat to and find a bit more about. So my last reflection question and challenge to you is this. Again, some inspiration is often needed for us to push through these, glass ceilings or barriers, is remembering, what the impact that we can have on others is. So who could you be a role model to, both now and in the future? And I know some of you might be thinking, oh, I'm not a role model, I'm never going to be a role model. But a study's actually revealed that 70% of girls think differently about their futures when they hear from another woman who's a role model. And CMI research tells us that role models aren't actually always necessarily famous people. They're real and they're approachable people that can have a direct impact on that individual's life or career. So think about who might be watching you, who could learn from you, and what learnings that you could share with others. My tip for you would be to use the time we've got now that we are, in very surreal circumstances. It's much more acceptable nowadays to reach out to people and connect with them online. LinkedIn, social media is a great tool. I've met some amazing role models and some of my mentees through social media too. So it's something that I would encourage you to make the most of now that we are all inside. So my final reflection, I want to share with you. I've done a lot of reflecting to put this together and to share with you today. We have still got a really, really long way to go to advance gender equality, as Ash shared. In fact, during this pandemic, we've gone backwards. The UN is telling us that this pandemic could wipe out the past 25 years of progress around gender equality. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. And the barriers seem even greater for some women in some industries or some women from certain backgrounds. Sometimes this can feel really discouraging, and that's okay. But on International Women's Day, let's reflect on where we've come as individuals and as organisations. So I'd like you to use the time that we've got today, after this event, during this event, thinking about which women have inspired or helped you along the way. This might be your mom, it might be a really amazing teacher that you had, it might be somebody who you've spoken to and somebody's doing a role that you would really like to have in the future. Please thank them, use this day to thank them, acknowledge them. I'm sure dropping them a message or lifting them up will really help them and support them with the barriers that they'll be breaking. And if you haven't got that person already, I'd like you to think about how you can actually show up and be that woman for somebody else. So thank you so much for having me. I hope that you will do some reflecting and that you find that interesting and that you enjoy the rest of the day. And I will hear from you on the panel as well.
Wow, thank you so much, Hayley. To hear from your experience has been fantastic. I think we're really lucky to have the opportunity to listen to you today. So thank you. And I love seeing in the chat, there's so much activity. Everybody's answering those questions, lots of different role models, which is amazing to hear. Hayley will be available to talk to you on the panel too today. I can see we've got some fantastic questions. So Hayley will be able to help answer those as we go into the panel. So just so you know. One thing I didn't mention actually when I introduced the event today is we will be also providing you with a resource kit that will be sent to you post-event. So all of these fantastic resources that are being signposted during the sessions today, you will get sent across to you over the next couple of days. So just one to watch out for. Okay, thank you, Hayley. That was just yeah, incredible. I feel inspired and I've made lots of notes. So thank you so much for being our keynote. Okay, so I did want to just use this opportunity to remind you of our competition. For those of you that maybe didn't dial in right at the beginning, we are hosting a chance for you to win £100 Not on the High Street voucher, which is a female-owned business. And simply, all you need to do is take a selfie of yourself. Obviously, it's a selfie with the Choose the Challenge pose, and post it on one of our 4 social media channels or multiple channels with those hashtags, okay? And I'd really love you to just highlight one takeaway at least that you've took from the sessions. I mean, already we've got some fantastic nuggets for you to share with your network, so really great. And of course, if you've got any questions on the event today, please send them over to sayhello@ehi.com. And of course, you're using the chat, which is fantastic. And questions for the panel we've got next, please use that Q&A box. And we've got some great questions already that we can ask. Okay, so next, I'd like you to be introduced to our panel. This is our panel for today. It is our Women in Industry panel. And when we were selecting our panelists and asking them to attend, we really wanted to bring together a cross section of industry, I would say typical male dominated industries, to get you to meet these women who have faced barriers, invisible barriers, and have been able to challenge them to be successful. So I would like to hand you over now to Laura James from our Talent Attraction team and Caroline Collins, Partnerships and Engagement Manager at Enactors UK. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for introducing us. And yes, welcome everybody to our Women in Industry panel. As Claire quite rightly said, my name is Laura James and I'm part of the talent acquisition team. And Caroline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Welcome everybody, and thank you for having me. I feel like Claire's already introduced me. I am the Partnership and Engagement Manager at Enactors UK, which is a social enterprise charity. I can see a couple of our students on the call, which is fantastic. So we operate in 65 different UK universities, and we aim to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as providing you guys with lots of employability opportunities from our partner organisations, such as Enterprise. So it is an absolute pleasure to join you on the call today.
Great, thank you, Caroline. I can already see so many fantastic questions coming through. And as we go through the next hour's panel event, we will be using the question and answer box. So please do keep submitting the questions you want to ask to our lovely panel. The ladies that we have with us today have been incredibly successful in their careers. They do come from numerous different industries, from engineering, manufacturing, automotive, tech, and I'm sure they're ready to give you some nuggets of their own experience and some help and support as you start to look into your own career.
Brilliant. Shall we begin then, Laura?
Yes, please. Do you want to go through and introduce?
Of course. So, Nabila, I don't know if you want to start by just briefly introducing yourself to everybody.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. I'm Nabila, president of Revelant Group, one of the world's fastest growing talent creation companies focusing on Salesforce and AWS. And my career spans about 15 years in technology based in the UK and the US. I was the first female VP and the youngest to be appointed VP at the former FTSE 250 company I used to work for. And it's something I often share just because it's a lonely place to be when you're the only one there. But today I lead a business where 63% of employees identify as Black, Asian or minority ethnic, and 50% of the senior management team are thirds of whom are working moms. So diversity and inclusion is something I've always been incredibly.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That is incredible. Nikki, I don't know if you could introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. So my name's Nikki Simpson. I'm the Commercial Director for Enterprise FlexiRent, and I've been in the fleet industry for 25 years, and I've seen lots of positive changes and improvements over the years. But I don't think when I started back in the industry back in the day, we would have had a day like today where we're bringing everybody together and inspiring each other. And it's really great to be involved. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Nikki. That's wonderful. Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, happy International Women's Day. Yeah, my name is Sarah Blacksmith. I work for Siemens in Congleton. My title is Head of Factory Operations, so I lead the production and engineering in Congleton. And I've been with Siemens for my whole career, so I've been with them for 19 years. And 10 years I was in Lincoln, and 9 years in Congleton. When I first started in Congleton, there was no women on the senior management team, and now we're up to 40%. So we're getting there. We're getting we're getting much better than what we were.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. And then last but not least, Evelyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Has a happy International Women's Day. I can't not say it, everyone else has. I work for Nestle. I'm head of the academy, so look after anything to do with youth in our business. I've been at Nestle for 20 years. I actually joined on their graduate program in sales and marketing, which is where I found myself, I guess, first in my career in quite a male-dominated environment. But since then, I've moved into HR. I've now been in HR for 12 years. But again, there were times within my career in HR where I have been kind of in the minority. Firstly, as a factory HR business partner, where when I first arrived at the factory, I was told that I was looking after the old man of the factory, which was our process department, where we made our coffee, and basically all bar one within that whole department were male. And then I've also been the HR business partner for our sales team as part of the leadership team there. And again, on a team of 18 people, but only 2 women. So yeah, been with Nestle, like I say, 20 years. Became a mum last year, which was the best moment of my life, but has changed my world completely, as you can imagine. So really looking forward to being part of today's panel. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those introductions. We did get to see a sneak peek of Evelyn's child earlier today, and it was very cute, I can assure you all. So sorry you missed that. But just quickly before we get into the questions, I can see a lot of messages in the chats. If you do want to ask us a question, please pop it in the Q&A section. We'll try and get through as many as possible, like Laura said, but if you could upvote the ones that you think are most exciting, the ones that you really are desperate to have an answer for, then please do let us know in the Q&A. So Hayley, I'm so sorry I didn't introduce you, but that is because you delivered such a fantastic keynote speech, and I was inspired, so I'm sure the students on the call were inspired as well. But I think one question that I would really love to ask, and something I was thinking about that you mentioned earlier, is really as the students start to think about their early careers, do you think you would be able to identify for us maybe one thing that you did in your early career that had the biggest impact on where you are today?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. When I look back, I definitely think that I did quite a lot of things right. I was really fortunate because I was put in really good positions, but I did a lot of things right. I think, to be honest, it's really fitting that I'm going to say this because of what we're doing today. It's showing up for things like this and actually getting involved in some of the things that are offered to you. So I remember when I was, in first year of uni, I was definitely not interested in turning up to events. I missed out on loads of opportunities to network with people. It was actually in second year when I started to take more interest, met other people, connect with other students who had done some other amazing things because of opportunities that employers had been giving them. So I think this is actually a really key thing, like making the most of these kind of spaces, connecting with people on LinkedIn, chatting to them, asking the questions that you really want to know, and showing up and not just, I guess, sitting in the background and not taking on board what people are saying, because you don't even know how much this might help you later on, or when you start actually entering the workplace. It might not all seem relevant, but trust me, it is.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Hayley. And that's something that we talk about a lot when we go in to universities from a talent attraction perspective. Get involved if you're going to come, do something with it, and especially that LinkedIn comment as well. I think, hopefully we'll all have lots more of connections after today's event. Nabila, I know that you said in our earlier conversation that you also had something in your early career that you felt had made a difference to where you are now. Would you care to share that?
Yes, Laura. To me, what stands out as having made a difference is embracing opportunity. I was asked to relocate to New York to help grow the business in North America, and it was daunting. Yes, absolutely. And I think, another thing early on in my career was when I was asked to head people operations in North America with no background in HR whatsoever. So I was thinking, Lord, I don't even know if I can do this. But I thought, right, what's the worst that can happen? At best, I'll succeed and learn something new. I'll learn that it's not for me. So I think challenging myself and embracing opportunity has helped me immensely in my career. And I think, some always, work hard, become a trusted member, and focus on what matters, delivering results. If you're asked to help other departments, go for it. Go above and beyond, because if you can make a difference, and that's how you build sponsors that will help you progress in your career.
Thank you, Nabila. I think that's a really interesting point about making those connections and building those bridges. I think one of the questions that we've just had through in the chat, and Sarah, I'd love to direct this at you, just thinking about your experience of, that 19 years in your industry, and talking about how you've got 40% of women on the leadership panel. One of the questions that we've had come through that has been quite a popular one is, how do you promote women's participation in a sector where they are so underrepresented?
Yeah, good question. I think we're doing a lot better at it than we have been previously. I mean, if I think back to when I was at uni, and on my course, I think there was 6 women out of about 100 on the course, and it just wasn't part of, it wasn't advertised, it wasn't encouraged. And I think we do a lot more of that now, in terms of promoting engineering and STEM topics anyway, to school children and stuff. I've literally just come off a call where we've done an hour with one of the local high schools in Congleton to doing things like this. I mean, we never used to do that when I was at school. So I think, more of stuff like this, raise people, put people, raise people up and showcase different people and have the role models, because again, there was no role models for any of these positions. I mean, well, certainly not in my industry when I first started. So the more that we can sort of highlight people getting to these positions and also managing to balance it. I mean, I haven't got kids, but I know, how challenging it must be for people who do have children, and balancing that. And it's sort of telling stories, I think, is one of the best ways to engage people.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I do have children, so I can say, yes, it can certainly be a challenge, I think, especially in the last 12 months. And that brings us really nicely to you, Evie. If you wouldn't mind kind of giving us a bit of insight from your perspective, maybe on obviously what it's been like with a successful career, but also having that aspect of a family as well.
Yeah, so well, I guess I kind of had Jeremiah later on in life, if you like. So I'm 41 now, and my up until I had Jeremiah, work was my life. I lived away from my family because I moved away when I got on Nestlé's graduate program. And don't get me wrong, I still saw my family and still saw friends, but I really put all of my effort, if you like, into work. And then I'd got to the point in my life where I thought, do you know what? I'm fine on my own. I don't need a man. I'm fine. I don't, if I have kids, I have kids, and I just kind of let it all go. And then, would you believe it? By chance, I met Jerry, my partner, literally just by sheer coincidence. And we've been together nearly 4 years now. Jeremiah, our son, is coming up to 18 months, and he's all I've ever dreamed of. I've always wanted to be a mother. And last year, the thought of going back to work was really hard. I found it harder than I thought I would, given how work had been such a huge part of my life for so long, and I'd always loved what I did, and I was so passionate about work. And I'll be really honest, when it came to me coming back, I was really not looking forward to it. And the thought of putting Jeremiah into nursery was just heartbreaking. I've been back at work almost 6 months now. I am loving what I'm doing. I love the job that I'm in. I am passionate about making a difference to people's lives. It drives me, it gets me up out of bed in the morning. And I want to make a different world for my son as well. So my partner's Black, so our son is mixed. And that is like I say, that's what drives me. How do I balance it? I don't know that I found the balance, if I'm honest. But how do I juggle it is what I'd say. And I think the first thing I'd say is Jeremiah comes first. Now, that is it without a shadow of a doubt. I try and look at everything as choices rather than I must or I should. Everything I do is a conscious choice, which feels far more empowering rather than you being a victim to what's happening. And, you know, I feel like I am a better mother to Jeremiah because of the balance now that I have in my life and that I am working. And he gets so much from being at nursery. But equally, you know, Jerry, his dad, is a chef. So on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Jeremiah is with his dad here at home. And clearly I'm here too. So that can be a little distracting. But it's great as well because I get to have little hugs partway through the day. So I do feel, although COVID has been challenging and I did feel a little bit robbed of part of my maternity leave, actually, you know, I have been very fortunate because I've been able to spend more time with Jeremiah than I would have done had the world been normal. And I think, you know, the world of work now will change, I think, going forward. So I'm hoping that there is more balance. But I think my reflection on it would be, you know, see things as choices and just acknowledge how you feel at the point in time. And there's no easy route through it and there isn't a fast forward, but you do come out the other side. And it's just, well, for me, it's been the most rewarding thing in my life so far. So yeah, there we go.
Thank you. That is a wonderful answer. And one of the things that you mentioned was about feeling empowered by our choices, which is such a wonderful way to look at things. And one of the questions that we've had, there are quite a few men on this call, which is wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us. And one of the most popular questions is, as a male, what is the most important thing that I can do to help empower women in the workplace? And I'd be really interested to hear your views on this. Nikki, I don't know if you want to kick off the answering for this one.
I mean, that's a great question, and thank you for joining us. And I think probably the greatest thing people can do, whether it's a male or a female, is listen. So allow somebody a voice, allow someone to take part and to give them confidence to speak. And I've heard someone say before, when you come into a room, you want people to want you to come into a room because they know you will empower them and you will give them a voice and you will make them feel important. You don't want to be the person in the room that people don't want to be there, because they know that you won't give them the opportunity, you won't hear their voice. And I think for all of us, it's really important that a team dynamic is great, but that dynamic only works if you allow people the confidence to have a voice, have an opinion, and to share their ideas and really empower them in that way. And I think and there is a situation where, and women, especially when they're starting out and in a dominated industry, especially when I started in Fleet, it was very dominated by men, and it probably still is to this day. And you're often the only person in the room. You're often the only person, or very few people in an event. And I've been at events where there's tables full of men and you're lucky to get one woman per table there. And I think the best thing you can do is engage and give everybody that power and everybody that voice. And I think that's, whether that's a man to a woman, I think that's the most important thing you can do.
I was just going to say, can I just build on what Nikki's just said? Because I agree with everything you've said, Nikki. I think the other build that I would have is certainly an experience that I've had, and certainly talking to one of my female role models as well, one of the challenges she's had, and certainly I've seen time and time again in meetings, is as a woman, sometimes you'll make a point, or you'll give a view or an expression or a decision or a recommendation, and it's not heard. And then the conversation will go around the room a little bit, and then a man, maybe slightly more senior, will reword exactly what you said and claim it as their suggestion, and everyone agrees. And it is like so frustrating, because you're sat there thinking, God, did I just not say that? But like, no one listened to me, and that person just said it and everyone's listened to them, and you kind of scratch your head thinking, well, what is it? Why was that? So I think if ever you are in a situation where you either catch yourself doing that. That's great that you recognize it in yourself, so acknowledge it. But equally, if ever you're in a meeting and you kind of see that happening, is okay, it might take a little bit of bravery, but maybe just step in and say, I've just noticed this, and almost play the observation back to the room, because all of this is small behavioral changes that make the difference. There isn't one thing that's going to change it overnight. So if you can do that, that would be hugely powerful.
And I think about how you're going to say it. So it's like the old saying, isn't it? You can say anything, and if you say it with confidence, the person will believe you. And you can be totally correct, but say it very timidly or not sound convincing yourself, and you don't sound believable. So I think there's always a little onus on ourselves as well to think about how we're presenting ourselves and how we present the point. So I think as well on that point is an excellent point, but we also stop yourself and think about that and think, how did you present what you were going to say, and have some confidence. You know, you really need that confidence to present your point.
Did you want to jump in there, Sarah?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really difficult, isn't it? Because Evelyn, when you said that, if you hear someone saying it, you're almost like, am I going to sound really petty if I start saying, well, I just said that, like, you know, you sort of, yeah, you almost need someone else to help you with that. So that's where that could come in, isn't it? So that you, yeah,
no, or even if it's a reflection after the meeting that you can follow up and, you know, get some feedback on it. You know, because I certainly, I've seen it. And I've had people talk to me about it as well as I've experienced it myself. So, but equally, you know, I do agree with Nikki's point, you know, you need to come across with conviction in how you're saying something. But if you're in an environment where you're in a minority and you might not feel comfortable, that's harder to do. So it's how you find a balance, really.
I think that gentleman's point when he said, what can we do? They could be that supporter, that they're the person we want in the room, because we know that person is going to give us that voice we wanted, and to back up, like Evie, if you were the person who came up with it first, they're the person that then backs up your comment, and then that's the support person you want in the room with you. That's what they can do for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they're absolutely fantastic points, and you know, we can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. We need to have allies, and we need to have people supporting each and every one of us to get to that place of gender equality. And actually that confidence point that you made, Nikki, is so prudent, and it's so common, and it's actually one of our most commonly asked questions on the panel today. So question around kind of confidence in general and confidence in interviews and then subsequently in the early stages of your career. Nabila, do you want to jump in and give us some advice around how you could potentially gain that confidence, find that confidence?
Yeah, sure. I think confidence is an interesting thing, because at the end of the day, you know, but if we don't believe in ourselves, you know, no one else will. That's what I ask people you trust and who believe in you, you know, who elevate you and make you feel good about yourself. That advice. Don't stick around anyone who you feel is not in your career, because you know there will always be people out there who, you know, aren't necessarily the type of people we like to. So I would just distance myself from those people and really find who may yourself, because ultimately it's down to ourselves to find that confidence. And in interviews, I think having a mentor is actually really useful. So if you don't have a mentor, find a mentor. And a lot of people ask me, how do I find a mentor? Well, you know, it's as simple as asking. So think about who inspires you, who you trust, and who you think can give you some really good advice to sort of and do well in interviews and elevate your career, and ask the person they can be your mentor. I've had a few mentors in my career, all of whom have been men, actually, and I've asked them to be my mentor. That's how I got my mentors. So I would highly recommend you learn from others and find those people that will help you along the way, but ultimately believe in yourself.
That's great advice. Thank you, Nabila. Is there anything that you want to add on that, Hayley, with regards to kind of, you know, the confidence that you found at such an early stage, you know, heading into an all boys school and really kind of having to get to grips with it a stage much quicker than a lot of us would have to. Anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think two things for me, doing things that scare you. I mean, people say that I'm really confident, and I think I am to a point, but I still get nervous. I just push through. And I think one of the things is recognizing that nobody is ever 100% confident. We all have confidence issues. Men have it, they just do it. But I think women are labeled as not confident. I think as I have grown in my career and as a woman, I've realized that, I'm enough and I have everything that I need. And actually, sometimes it's the room I'm in that's not inclusive or that doesn't value me, or it's the organization that I'm in or I'm working with that doesn't value me. That doesn't mean that's not a reflection on me. So sometimes we internalize a lack of confidence. We internalize that we don't fit in, or we don't look like the senior leaders in this organization, or we don't have this. But sometimes that's actually like subtle messages that we're being told in the spaces that are around us. So I think not listening to those like little voices, whether they're in your head or coming from the messages around you, and realizing that you're more than enough. And I think the point around mentoring is really so important. I have had mentors from quite an early stage in my career. And just having somebody that can give you a little pep talk or can support you when your confidence is at a lower point is important. But I think just don't put too much pressure on yourself to be confident, because nobody fully is. People are faking it until they make it, and some people just fake their whole life, like me.
Yeah. I'm sure that's not the case. But yeah, confidence does seem to be this mythical kind of, ability that other people have and you never manage to gain yourself. I know this is very true of a lot of people within our company who've been incredibly successful. And that point again on mentoring, internally at Enterprise, we very much promote mentoring. And again, I've had a lot of mentors, and one thing that one of them has said to me that always stood out is, if not you, then who? And I thought that phrase was just fantastic, because if you don't go for that job, if you don't push yourself, then someone else is going to get it. But why should they? So I just thought I'd add that to that point. Sorry, Caroline, I think you've got another question.
No, it's okay, don't worry. I was just going to touch on what Hayley said, and one of the questions that we've been asked in the chat function, the question and answer function, is that you mentioned that you experienced a lot of rejections with your job applications, and I think there's, it's a really difficult time to be a graduate in the labour market at the minute, and I think a lot of students would love to know, how did you deal with these rejections and the frustration of finding out that another application this time hasn't been successful?
Do you know what, like, I have to be honest, it was really, really hard. So I think the first thing I'd say is, like, you're not alone. Like, if this is really messing with your self-esteem, your mental health even, it's very normal to feel that way. Like, I struggled even for the interview that I got for my dream job. I almost didn't go because I was so nervous and I was not in a good way, and like mentally, that I just thought, what's the point? So I think just acknowledge that that's totally fine, and hopefully there's support that you can access as well. That's something that I wish I did. But the other thing I would say is that this is really easy for me to say now, and I know that some of you will be thinking, oh, well, of course she's going to say that because it turned out all right for her. But honestly, like, the right thing will come. Even with like people that I mentor, they receive rejections, and I'm always saying to them, like, you're going to get the job that you deserve, or the job that you really want will come. So don't like beat yourself up over missing out on opportunities. I mean, some opportunities you might feel that you really want, and they can be the hardest ones to sort of let go of. But I think it is just about patience and being in the right place. But as well, if as much as you can, try and get feedback. So something that occurred to me recently, I was supporting like a woman who wants to break into the sports journalism space. And she was getting really frustrated. She applied to a lot of jobs, loads of rejections. And I said, okay, let me have a look at your CV. And she sent me her CV, and like, it was bad. And I was like, I feel really bad to say this to you, but I feel really happy that you showed me your CV, because now I know that this is the problem and that you're not the problem, and you're going to then hopefully improve your CV and get jobs. So don't be afraid to ask for help. It might just be something really silly that you've done, or it might be something that's really easy to fix, and that will improve your chances. So get advice from as many people, even if your parents, or just asking people who might support you to get that guidance is really key. You can't do it on your own.
Yeah, no, great points. And I think, most career services have fantastic resources for students to go to. And actually at 5:40 today, we have a session around mental health and wellbeing, where we pose exactly the same question to 3 mental health and wellbeing professionals. So if you're interested in that, please stick around and log on. I do have another question, which is now at the top of the leaderboard, so very popular. Sarah, I wonder if you want to pick this one up. No reflection on yourself, obviously, or how you're perceived, but I wonder if you want to sort of give your 2 pence worth on this. So we've got a question around how people are perceived and how women are perceived. So how do they make sure that they come across as leaders as opposed to being boxed off and put into that bracket of being bossy? Do you think that's something that they take ownership of and how they go about it? Or do you think it's just one of those sort of workplace perceptions?
I think there is like a lot of perceptions about women in leadership positions. I mean, I just try and focus on developing relationships with people and giving feedback. I think, Hayley, you touched on it there about how to, I think one of the, not the problems with women, but the problems with lots of people is that they don't give feedback effectively. And so you end up coming, you're trying to make a change, or you're trying to help another person make a change. And then you end up in, causing more problems by not being able to give feedback in an effective way. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think we showcase ourselves enough. I don't think, and you can do that by showcasing your team. If you're leading a team, you don't have to say, oh, look at me, I'm fantastic, look at all this work I've done. You can say, I try and big my team up and say, look at what everyone's doing, a fantastic job. And by doing that, yeah, okay, but you don't become a leader to get all the plaudits. The aim of leading people, it's to bring people with you to try and get somewhere, hopefully better than where you are now, and and serving people and not putting yourself up. That should just come as a byproduct of, is what I'm trying to say, of bigging your team up and developing your team, and you'll be able to shine doing that anyway. But yeah, I don't know if that's answered the question as well, but hopefully it has.
Oh, sorry, Nikki, did you want to touch on this one?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think it's just important that you have your own style, and you very much don't try to be what you think someone wants you to be or what you should be as a leader. And I think it always comes back to that confidence thing again. I don't know, we sort of say it, but you have to find your own inner self. And I think if you try and be something you're not, or the vision you think a leader should be, you will automatically fail, and you will be perceived to be something you're probably not. So I think it's important to really think about your own skills and what makes you good as a person. And that, a saying I like to use a lot is, a lion doesn't need to tell you it's a lion. You'll know that. You'll work with the person, and you'll demonstrate your skill set, and you'll evidence that. And I think people will then come along with you, and they'll see that you have that skill set, and they'll want to be part of your team. And I think that's really important, that you try and just be you. And I think there's a comment very much around Hayley's comment, you're enough. You just use your skill set.
Definitely. Oh, sorry, Evelyn.
I was just going to build on what Nikki said. So I absolutely agree with everything that's just been said. I guess a little story, if you like. So I, when I first was applying for roles as a graduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I applied to the police, I applied to Inland Revenue, and I applied to FMCG companies as well, all in terms of doing sales programs. And I did the police assessment centre. And I thought, right, I need to be like this. And it was the most horrific 3 days of my life. I absolutely hated it, because I was being who I thought they wanted me to be during the course of the assessment centre. And when I got to the feedback session, she said, I'm really sorry to tell you you've not been successful. And I was like, oh, thank God for that, because I was like, there's no way I could do this forever. This would be awful. Because, you spend a lot of your life at work, So then my next assessment centre was Nestle, and I was like, right, I am just going to relax. I'm just going to be me, and I'm just going to enjoy myself. And that's what I did. And I think, this comes back to Nikki's point. Being a leader is about being authentic. It's about knowing who you are, understanding, what your strengths are, but what you're not. Because that's what makes me who I am, and I can't be anybody else, and I don't want to be anybody else. And actually, I bring the best of me when I'm all of me. And you know, at times, yes, I might need to change my style. You know, I don't know how much, you know, as students you understand about kind of different preferences, but we use what we call color energies. And you know, I don't have a lot of what I would call fiery red, bossy energy in me. But when I need to do it, I do it, because if something needs doing, I need to flex my style as a leader, but I do it in a way that's comfortable to me. And if I'm doing something outside my comfort zone, I would just say, look, this isn't my natural style, but, you know, and that way I feel like I'm always being true to me. So I think, you know, as a woman, as a man, as anyone, you know, the critical thing is to just know who you are and just be authentic to yourself as a leader, and then people will want to work with you.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that really nicely kind of segues into kind of like a closing round of statements, I suppose, from all of us. Like, I love the quote that you said, Evelyn, where you said you're the best you when you're all of you. And I think that would be a great way to finish, if we could share reflections on what would be the one piece of advice that you could give yourself if you went all the way back to the start of your career, that you would love to tell yourselves, but also maybe worth telling the students in our audience today. Evelyn, I don't know if you want to start, just because we just heard that from you. I'm so sorry. You're looking at me like, please no.
I'll try to be really quick.
Have a couple. You treat yourself. So, you can have as many as you like.
Very, very quickly then. So when I was 17, I got engaged. I did my A-levels. I thought, oh, well, I may as well go to university. So I went to university. I did chemistry. I got a first. I didn't want to go into chemistry. I was a bit hubble bubble, toil and trouble with a white coat on, and I thought, this just isn't me. But my life's ambition was to be an army wife, to have children, and I was going to paint nails. And I do paint my nails. I paint my own, which is quite handy in a lockdown. But that was what I aspired to. And then all of a sudden I got on Nestlé's graduate program, and I was like, wow, you know, maybe I could do something with my life. So I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I give myself back then is, it comes back to Hayley's point around being enough, and is something I'm still grappling with. It links back to childhood. But I think that the biggest thing is just believe in your ability and aspire to those dreams that you have, and go for it. Find people who'll support you, and don't be afraid, and feel the fear anyway, and just go for it and try it, and you'll achieve things way beyond your wildest dreams.
Fantastic, thank you. I love that. Feel the fear and do it anyway. That is a brilliant quote. Nabila, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this too.
I completely agree with Evelyn. You know, I believe that the barriers exist for everyone, not just women. You know, there will always be people out there who judge us based on our age, our gender, the color of our skin, and so many other things. We have limited influence on this, but we can influence how it makes us feel and what we do about it. So my advice would be, don't let it get to you, and don't let it stop you. If you want to achieve something, keep trying until you get there. Multiple roads lead to the same place. And, you know, our minds can often be the worst barrier of all if we can't overcome what people might think or might say of us. You know, from experience, I know that all barriers represent opportunity. So we must continuously challenge ourselves to break them. So, you know, as Evelyn said, believe in yourself, challenge yourself, and most importantly, don't be afraid to fail. If you aren't failing once in a while, you aren't aiming high enough.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Nikki, same question. Oh, gonna say those dreaded word, Nikki. You're on mute.
Oh dear, is there a prize for that?
I hope so.
I think for me, I'd probably say to myself, don't stay in a bad or dead end situation for too long. It's a bit to Nabila's point, almost about failure. sometimes, so don't, if something's not working for you, if it's not fulfilling you, challenging you, inspiring you, you have a choice. And I think Evelyn said earlier, you have a choice. Take that choice. So it's okay sometimes to stop, have a rethink and a change of direction. It doesn't necessarily mean you failed anything. It just means you're taking a check and you're taking control of your destiny. But sometimes I think I probably stayed too long on something. And I think, Laura, you said a great thing. It says, you know, if not you, who? And I think there's also, if not now, when? You know, sometimes your chance is there, take it.
Definitely. Thank you, Nikki. And then Sarah.
Yeah, I think I don't, like, my mantra is, you know, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so, you know, things will always, there'll always be stuff that goes wrong. And so for me, it's about how you're looking at the situations. If you go into a situation like with a negative attitude to it, more than likely it's gonna, you know, you're not gonna be able to get something positive out of it. So yeah, so that's my mantra to impart. And also, if anyone gets the chance to read a book that really sort of opened my eyes, it's called The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters, and that's such an amazing read if anyone wants a book recommend.
I'm sure we've all got some extra time on our hands, seeing as our social calendars have rapidly decreased. No, thank you so much. I know there's been some fantastic quotes in this panel. I'm sure my digital engagement manager at Actors UK is writing them all down furiously to share them. And then Hayley, same question.
I feel like there's definitely a theme here, but I think for me, you know, I genuinely believe that I can do anything I put my mind to, and I wish I knew that when I was younger. Apart from maths, actually, I'm just going to put it out there and say, because if any of my friends are watching this, they'll be like, Hayley, stop lying, you can't do maths. But something that I learned along the way was to not make decisions based on fear. So there's actually research that says that when you make a decision that stems from fear, so it might be accepting a job, even applying for a job, it's probably likely that it's not going to be the right thing for you. And when we let our minds lead us with fear, like, oh, what if I'm never going to get a job? So I'm going to apply to 10 jobs and hope that one of them is the one for me. You don't really put your all in it. Or turn up to an interview and spending so much time over preparing on such a small thing because you fear that you might get this aspect wrong. You will miss out on something else. And I think the point that Nikki made around like staying to some places for too long, like there's definitely been so many times when people have said to me, Hayley, you should do your own thing. You should start your own business. Or Hayley, you're really passionate about like sport and football and diversity. Why don't you do something about it? And I never thought that I would, because I thought, oh, I might look stupid. I might get it wrong. And the day I just decided, yeah, I'm going to do it, and I put that fear aside and put the opportunity and the hope at the forefront, everything sort of started to fall into place. So I would just say to everyone, especially if you're starting out, like, don't make any decisions based on fear. Like, you will get there in the end. You've got to lean towards hope, positivity, and opportunity.
Thank you, Hayley. And then she's probably going to hate me for this, but Laura, I'd love to ask you the same question as all our panelists. If you could impart your words of wisdom too, this is your opportunity.
I think I've just got to reiterate what I said before. It's not something that's been my mantra for very long, but it's certainly something that I plan on living by. And it's if not you, then who, you know. And if I'm honest, you know, the things that I've heard today, you know, I had a page ready for my takeaways for this whole event, and it's full already. So, you know, there's been so many inspiring quotes and so much, you know, information that's come through just from this panel, that there are, you know, contrary kind of pieces of advice flying around my head. But yeah, I'm going to stick with my if not you, then who. Put yourself forward, because if you don't, it can't happen. Come on, Caroline, it's your turn.
Oh my goodness, this is a nightmare. Tables have turned. I think I am quite new into my career. I don't have to impart the same amount of wisdom as everybody else, but I would just echo that. Like, I think there is a lot of things that we put ourselves into. I thought I was going to be a secondary school teacher up until the moment I graduated, and then went, oh no, I don't think I do want to teach. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I think it's just being open to opportunities. And if you please don't worry if you don't get that one dream job that you think you're going to land. It's important to, whichever job you go into, maybe it's not going to be the job that you want to do forever, but you will gain those skills and those experiences that will help you get a step further in the ladder on the way to where you want to be. So just be open to any opportunities. And I am going to plug every an Actors opportunity that I possibly can, because it wouldn't be an event with an Actors UK if I didn't talk about it. But you know, a lot of people have degrees now. That is the way of the world, and we are so lucky to be in a position where we are able to go to university, but sometimes the degree needs to be supplemented with something. So I would say take those opportunities, and an Actors UK is one of those opportunities that you can take as a student. So get involved. I think there's going to be an advert later on, but if it isn't an Actors, then like the amazing women in this panel have said, take any opportunities that you can get, because the more you put into things, the more you will get out from them. So Laura, back to you in the studio.
That's a great point, in the studio. Thank you, Caroline, for handing over. Great point, Caroline. And I think, you know, you've had your plug, but I am going to back you up there. As a graduate recruiter, you're right. We see a lot of people come through with their degree, and that's fantastic. And I'm sure, you know, the vast majority have gained a lot through those studies, but you need more. You need more. You need other experiences, whether it just be a part-time job, volunteering, a society, and an Actors is a fantastic way to do that. So don't let that pass you by. I just want to say a massive thank you. I want to say an absolutely enormous thank you to you fantastic panelists for the inspiring, inspirational, you know, information that you've given us, for sharing your experiences, for giving us all of those nuggets to take away. I, like I say, have got reams of takeaways already at this early point in the event. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you're all the same. I hope everybody in the audience is the same, and you've all learned something from this panel. We do have other events coming up, so we are going to we're going to break. Apologies we didn't get round to answering all of your questions, but thank you so much for contributing and popping them all in the chat function. We are going to ask you to come back from your break at 20 to 5. And when you do that, you're going to have the option of 2 fantastic sessions. So in this main room, we're going to have a session around working smart, not hard, which will focus on your personal brand and get you ready to start your career. And in the side room at the same time, we're going to have Don't Create Barriers, Break Them, which will explore imposter phenomenon. And I know imposter is something that came up in a few of the questions on the panel today. So if it's something that's interesting to you, please do log in and watch that session in the side room. So without further ado, thank you very much for listening. Thank you once again to the panelists. Thank you, Caroline, for your fantastic co-hosting support. And we hope to see you back in 10 minutes in whichever room you choose to attend. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. Hope you managed to get yourself a drink and do some good reflection on that last panel. I know I'm very biased, but I have to say that was one of the best panels that I've listened to in a long time. So thank you everyone for being involved in that. We do have a lot of questions that have been put up in the chat, and we want to try and really use these questions to help some of the discussions over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to be taking these, and our teams are going to be answering them on social media, and we'll make sure that we're having these conversations as it's ongoing. And like I say, this isn't just seen as a one-off event. So next up, I am really excited to introduce our next panel, and the session is called Work Smart, Not Hard session, where you're going to learn from our teams about how to get ahead, shaping your personal brand, and you're going to meet some of our great female area managers who have done exactly that over the past few years. So I'm going to hand over now to Sophie Draper and Raj Dohil. Raj was actually named as one of the Asian Women of Achievement Award winners a couple of years ago. So really excited to have Raj hosting this session. And everybody just enjoy the next hour or so. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ash. So everyone should be able to see my screen now, and I just wanted to introduce by, instead of going straight into introductions from me and Raj, going to let you know that this is going to be a very interactive session. So if you've got devices, iPads, phones, another device that you aren't currently using, if you could go to www.kahoot.it and then enter that code there. You can enter your name, a nickname, whatever you want. Please keep it PG as we can see it, but just bear in mind that if someone else has already taken that name, you'll have to change it slightly. So add a number, add a symbol or something like that. I'll give you a little bit longer, maybe up to a minute, to just submit into that. We've got 23 people and that's going up very, very quickly. And that's because we're trying to keep you engaged. We want to make this session interactive. So there'll be a few different bits where we'll ask for your opinions, where there's a quiz going on and things like that. So it would be fantastic to get you involved in that as well. Now we do have a maximum of 300. So if you want to get involved, get your name in there fast, because if there are more than 300 people that want to play along, then unfortunately after that 300 mark you won't be able to submit your name. So just make sure you get your name in there so you're not disappointed. And if you don't want to play along, that's absolutely fine. You can just watch along, look at the presentation, look at some of the polls that we've got going on as well. So we're up to 112 people now, which is fantastic. Oh, it's still going. Like I said, I'll give it another 20 seconds and then we're going to get down to it and introduce ourselves and our fantastic session. We're up to 123 people now, which is great. So hopefully we'll have a really, really engaging session with you. Okay, I'm going to, last couple in there. I'm going to start it now. So if you've not got your name in there, then unfortunately you'll just have to watch along. Okay, fantastic. Raj, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Welcome everybody, and hopefully you've enjoyed the session so far. Thanks, Ash, for that introduction. Every time somebody mentions the award, I get those little goose pimples. But what an empowering panel we've just had. Behind the scenes, I was nodding away with agreements to all the comments that were made. So my name is Raj Dohil, and this is Sophie, my colleague Sophie Draper, and we will be taking you through the next 15 minutes with our interactive session. Yep, interactive, around working smart and not hard, and how it's all within your control. But first, Sophie, over to you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Raj. So hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Sophie Draper, and I work alongside Raj's Enterprise's talent acquisition team. I specifically focus on talent attraction, so building and maintaining relationships with outside institutions like universities, colleges and schools, working with students on campus and virtually, and telling them all about us and our opportunities as well. I've worked for Enterprise now for 4.5 years, roughly. I started on the graduate management trainee scheme back in 2016, and I've worked my way up through management and then took a change in my career. I've now been working in the talent acquisition team for nearly 18 months.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie. And as I said, my name's Raj Dohill, and I'm on the other side of talent acquisition, where my role is to look after all things candidate care related, from interviewing talent to supporting our candidates through our recruitment process and offering guidance, development and support to our field operations around recruiting best practices. Now, over my career, and I won't say how long that's been, just to say that I'm blessed with young looks, I've been fortunate enough to recruit for our graduate and placement scheme, be part of the restructure of our business support division, support hiring efforts for our international management trainee programme, and more recently, recruiting the best and brightest talent for our UK and Ireland operation. Now you know a little bit more about us, let's get started. So later in the session, you will hear from Holly Penfold and Charnel Taylor, two successful women leaders from our business, sharing their experience. Not to mention the opportunity for you to ask questions. So get thinking. And I know you haven't hesitated with asking questions. All those questions need to go into the Q&A chat, please. Now, I did say the session was going to be interactive. And with that said, let's get started. So personal brand. What is personal brand? And I'm sure each of us will have a very different understanding of what personal brand means to each other. However, in the chat function, I would like for you to type words that you associate with when you hear the phrase personal brand. Sophie, if I can ask you to keep an eye out on some of those words and just let me know what's popping up.
Yes, of course. So we've got a unique selling point, which is a fantastic one. Identity, attitude, management style. They're going so fast. Being yourself, authentic, uniqueness. Again, unique selling points. Public perception, values, creativity, work ethics. So some really, really good words coming through on the chat, Raj.
It's like the audience have already sneaked at my slides. So this is one of many definitions on Google, and who doesn't love Google? So your personal brand is an expression of who you are, and whether you like it or not, you already have one. It's how other people perceive you. I would like to add and say it's your reputation. It's about bringing who you are, what you do, and how you do it. It's about values, abilities, and actions that others can associate with. Your personal brand promotes yourself. It's a unique combination of skills, experience, and personality, and what you want the world to see. Branding yourself keeps you current in your chosen field, opens doors, and creates lasting impressions on clients and customers. It's the telling of the story and how you want to reflect your conduct, behaviour, spoken and unspoken words, and attitudes. So I think there are a lot of the key words that I heard you say. Remember, a successful brand self-promotes, stimulates a unique experience, breeds loyalties, and offers consistency. In summary, I'm going to say personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. Now, it's a good thing I won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Sophie, over to you for quiz time.
Thank you very much, Raj. So yeah, we're going to do a little quiz with you all now. And don't worry, there's actually no right or wrong answers to this quiz. So I know I've just seen someone in the chat put, can you imagine winning this Kahoot quiz? Unfortunately, you're not going to have the opportunity to win the Kahoot quiz because it's more kind of like a poll and seeing what other people are thinking and things like that. So the way it will work is you'll see a name and a picture of someone that you might know from the media come up on the screen. All we want you to do is pick the word that you would most associate with that person. You might actually find that you associate multiple words with that person, but click the one that first comes to mind. When it comes on, you'll see 4 words that you can choose from, all on a different coloured background. So what you'll then have to do is you'll have 20 seconds to identify which one you'd like to choose. And then on the device that you've logged onto the Kahoot, click in the colour of the answer. So you will have to look up at the screen to see what the words are, and then you look down at your device and you press whatever colour is suited. So I'm going to move on now. So hopefully you'll be able to see the poll come up on the screen. And the first person we've got for you is Michelle Obama. So hopefully you will all know who Michelle Obama is. And you've got another 15 seconds now to press on which word you think you would most associate with Michelle Obama? And it'll be really interesting to see. Like I say, no right or wrong answers here. 3, 2, 1, and the poll will come up, and we've had there 116 people say role model, and then the majority of the other people have put professional. So just be thinking as we're going through this, why do we think we're pressing, why are we seeing such high kind of answers with role model in particular for Michelle Obama? What is it saying about her personal brand? Just be thinking that in the back of your mind. So we're going to move on now to our next poll. So we've got the Kardashians. Very different end of the spectrum in terms of what they're famous for, but what word would you associate the most with the Kardashians as a whole, not particularly one, but as a family? And this will be really interesting to see if everyone answers the same like they did with Michelle, or if they answer differently, because I'm sure we'll have lots of different opinions here. Okay, so we've got the majority of people saying entrepreneurial, which is really good. And we've got then actually as a contrast, we've got the majority, the next kind of biggest answer is attention seeking. So that's quite a difference there. Moving on to the next one. So we've got Marcus Rashford. If you're a football fan, you might know Marcus Rashford quite well, but he has also been in the media loads recently for all of the other things that he's doing. So what word would you associate with Marcus Rashford? And again, it'll be interesting to know. It'll be interesting to know if you all know who he is. It'd be great if you do. 2 seconds. And we have role model being the top answer there, and shortly followed by philanthropic. And we've actually got 6 people that said anti-government, so we'll get onto that in a little while. And then we've got one more for you, which is Meghan Markle. Now, this one's quite controversial. It's very, very fresh in the media. I'm sure lots of you will be dialing in to the interview that she's doing with Oprah tonight. But what word would you describe? Again, no right or wrong answers. So just pick the one that comes to your mind first. And you've got 5 seconds to go. Interesting. This will be interesting. So we've got role model being the highest answer there, which is quite refreshing to see. But you can see there has actually been more of a difference there. We've got answers, quite high numbers for each one of those different answers. And I'm sure a lot of you will have opinions that weren't one of those answers. So moving on from that quiz then, why did we do it? Well, as Raj said before, your brand is all about how people perceive you, whether that is from meeting you, from reading about you, from seeing you in the press, or seeing you on the news. I mentioned before countless times that there is no right or wrong answer. And the reason for that is because people will always make their own minds up on you. People in the media are the extreme, because they're in the public eye, and there's lots and lots of people out there with differing opinions. Just because you might perceive the Kardashians in one way, that does not mean to say that I, for example, would perceive them in that exact same way. And we saw that by the polls, the different answers that were given. This is because people will have different ideas of what actions are seen as positive and which actions are seen as negative. Let's take Marcus Rashford as an example. So he's been in the news and all over Twitter now for months. Most comments, articles and things that I've read have been singing his praises for being philanthropic, for being a role model, and all of the work that he's done with homelessness and child hunger as well. But there are comments out there that see him to be disrupting the peace or causing a rift between the government and the people. And we've seen that from that poll, that there was a small majority of people that see that. If we take Michelle Obama as another example, nearly everyone chose professional or role model, which are both obviously a very positive way to be perceived. So many people have different opinions, but for the most part, Michelle Obama's got a really good personal brand. I think we can say that for sure. So whether you think you've got one or not, you have 100% got a brand. The big question we're going to be addressing today is, what is that brand? And that is something that we really are going to be exploring throughout this session. So throughout the session, we will be exploring how you can build on your brand when you're in the career that you want to be in, climbing up the ladder, being promoted and things like that. But for now, we're going to give you a few tips on how you can start to build your brand right now. A great way to do this is digitally. Don't just start thinking about the way people perceive you at work, but actually, how are you perceived now? And this, just considering this, might actually help you secure that role of your dreams that you're after. So the first tip we have for you is building your brand on places like LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn as recruiters. The go-to place employers look for candidates is LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn profile has to be all-star. If you want to be found by potential employers, it should mirror your CV. It should contain your unique selling point, as someone quite rightly mentioned in the chat before. And it should contain a summary, as well as all of those fantastic things that you are proud of yourself. This will help you get noticed. So companies also might link in with you when you've applied for a role, and they'll want to see your profile and see what you've been doing. So I think one of the takeaways that I would give you today is update your LinkedIn profile to make it attractive to potential employers by filling it all in with all of the amazing things that you've done in a start at building that personal brand. The second tip we've got for you is self and peer reflection, which really, really is key. Set your digital network up. Prepare your digital roles and profiles and CV, then take a step back and ask your peers, your contacts, your career service, your family and friends, one simple question. Ask them, what is my personal brand when you look at me online? And then once you've set up your social profiles, use them to build networks. Reach out to alumni from your university or your course, people from your dream company or industry. But please, please, please don't stop if someone fails to connect or respond to you, because there's a lot of senior managers out there now that are focused on giving back and mentoring those just starting their career. So it really can give you great exposure and open a lot of doors for your future as well. So those are some really good takeaways that I hope you use. So I'm now going to talk to you about the pie model, and this is where we're going to introduce our panel a little bit later. Some of you might be aware of what this model is already, and some of you might have never heard of it before, but hopefully all of you will leave here today having learned something new about pie. First of all, what it stands for, which is performance, image, and exposure. This model was originally created and written about by a guy called Harvey Coleman in his book called Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed. It is in this book that Harvey talks about performance, image, and exposure being the three key elements to career success. But what do we mean by these definitions? So just to put it very, very clearly, the way that Harvey defined them in his book is as follows. Performance is literally what you do in your job and how you show up in terms of level of commitment in delivering against the expectations of your role. It's the reputation builder, it's the start of your legacy essentially, and it confirms your ability to take on more responsibility. Image. So image is what other people think of you. It's the message that you send before you speak. Essentially, in a nutshell, it's your personal brand. Now, there's lots of different ways that image can come into play here. It can be about your attitude. Do you maintain a positive attitude? Do you lead with solutions to issues, or are you the person that solely offers roadblocks when others suggest changes or alternatives? Your image also impacts the first impression people have when they meet you. It's very literal in that sense, your actual image. This includes how you dress, how you perceive yourself, how confident you are, and your demeanor as well. And every interaction counts when you're building your brand. And then the last word we have is exposure. Who knows about you and what you do? Does your boss know what you do? Does their boss know you and what you do? And do others inside and outside of your organization know anything about you? Because it's all about visibility. Who are you visible to? Who can influence your career? Is it role models, as we spoke about on the panel before? Is it mentors, as we spoke about? Or is it your boss or a supporter? So now I'm going to hand back over to Raj and our other fantastic women in leadership, Holly and Charnel, who have all managed very successful careers and have used their brand to help them get them there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie, for that insight into the pie model and what it stands for and how it can impact us. Like Sophie said, we are now going to go into Q&A time, where we will hear from our panelists on how they've used the pie model within their careers to make themselves stand out and be successful. I would like to welcome Holly Penfold and Charnel Taylor to the panel. Fantastic. Welcome, ladies. How are you today?
Hello, good, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh no, thank you for giving us your great insights that we're going to have to take away at the end of all of this. So talking about insights and hearing your stories, we've just heard Sophie talk about the pie model. And now we're really keen to find out a little bit more about your story. Okay, but before we do, I'd like to kickstart with introductions. So Holly, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit more about you and your career, please.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Holly. I'm an area manager with Enterprise. I've been with the company coming up to 7 years this summer. Joined straight out of university. Didn't really know what I was looking for, just knew I wanted to get on a grad scheme and stumbled across this and thought it sort of fit my character perfectly. So I was started in 2014, completed the management training in 6 months, got promoted to assistant manager, then moved on to branch manager, where I moved around about managing 4 stores, varying in size, some rural, some city centres. 2 years ago, relocated up to Cumbria to be the area manager of that area, and then have recently just been promoted again to run one of the Birmingham areas where I start next week.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Chanel, how about yourself?
Yeah, so quite similar to Holly, really. Been here 7 years next month. Started straight after university, very similar, which I think is usually the case with people that join enterprises. You don't really know what you're signing up for, but you know that it's a really good graduate scheme, and that was very much me. And then when I started here, I just loved it straight away, and obviously here I am 7 years later. So similar, was a trainee, then got promoted to assistant manager after a year, then got promoted to branch manager after a year. Was a branch manager of 2 branches for around 2.5 years, and then I went off on maternity in December 2018 and had my little boy, who's now 2, came back just over a year ago, and then got promoted to area manager within a few weeks, and I now cover parts of Lancashire, and I've been an area manager now for just over a year, and coming up to 7 years in April.
So I'm sure you can relate to some of the ladies earlier on when they were talking about juggling a full-time career as well as being a mum then.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And it always makes me smile when everybody says, I stumbled across Enterprise, because it was very similar. And I stumbled across Enterprise and then the Met Police. And then the Met Police wanted me to do a fitness test. So I rolled straight over and into Enterprise, and I haven't looked back. And like I said, I'm not going to say how long that was. But thank you for that. So we're going to go to question time. So from experience, whenever I've opened the floor for questions, nobody wants to go first, so everybody goes quiet. So I've come prepared. However, this session has been put together for you, so I encourage you to get involved and ask questions. If there's a question you would like to ask our panel, please type it into the Q&A section, and then between myself and Sophie, we will answer as many as we can. Okay, so Chanel, if we can go straight into my first question, kickstart with yourself. Were you aware of your personal brand before you started your career, or was this something you only really started working on to get noticed and promoted?
Yeah, definitely was not aware of it when I first started. And I'd probably say it was only really when I became a branch manager. So maybe 3 years, two to 3 years into my career, that it's something that you kind of start to think about, because especially within enterprise, we're very big on promoting your personal brand and building a network, a support network around you, and getting to know as many people as possible. And I feel like from being a trainee up until a manager, I kind of did that anyway, but not intentionally for my own personal brand. I just did it to help me understand better and be surrounded around the right kind of people, which I think helped. And then I'd say when I was a branch manager, and it's when you really kind of finding your feet, and the more people that you know, the easier it becomes, and they want to help you. And then you find that people will tend to come to you for a certain, whatever they perceive you as, that they'll come to you for help in that area, or you'll have other managers come in to you if you're seen as a more experienced one, because they perceive you as being the senior manager, for example, on that team. So definitely not something I was aware of when I first started, and definitely not something that I worked on for at least 2 to 3 years, not intentionally anyway, which I think I'll come to a little bit later on when we do speak about pie. But now I know, and especially the past 12 months with everything that's happened, how it's definitely more important than ever. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Holly, what about yourself?
Yeah, similar to Charnel, it's definitely not something that I really sort of considered as I started with the company. I think it probably kicked in a little bit earlier for me though, because I was very focused on performance initially, and I was probably a little bit naive to think that performance was the main driver and the main factor, and that all you needed to do was perform, which that's not to say you don't need performance. Obviously, that is a very important part of it. But I think some of the other things, like kind of you touched on with the pie model, have a far bigger weighting once you kind of get yourself to the interview table. So it's something that I probably started working on as I became an assistant manager. So after about 6 or 7 months, because I was so focused on performance, I was probably a little bit fiery. So I probably had to adapt and learn that personal brand was something, and learn how to make sure that, you know, every decision that I make and everything I was trying to achieve, would that have the outcome, and would I be viewed how I wanted to be viewed? And I think you start having that at the back of your mind, and you start realizing that, you know, although I was 21, 22, this was the start of my career, and, you know, the impact that could have. And I think it's a really important question just to ask yourself is that, you know, would this give myself the personal brand that I want to have?
Both of you've just mentioned how you've sort of shifted and thought about personal brand and how it changed. And Charnel, you mentioned it was a couple of years in, and Holly, you've just mentioned it was about 7 years in. Was that because somebody approached you and said, hey, I think you need to really be thinking about your personal brand? Or was that just something you saw around the business? Holly, if you'd like to start that one off first.
It was a little bit of both for me. I think I started to kind of see it, but my area manager as a trainee kind of sat me down once and was like, you know, this is something you can't kind of go around all guns blazing all the time. You've really got to consider it. And after that conversation, I remember kind of coming away really shocked, because I was like, well, I'm performing, I'm doing everything they're asking me to do. And I was kind of shocked that I wasn't being viewed in the way that I thought I was. So yeah, it was probably more after a conversation was had around it.
Fantastic. Charnel, what about yourself?
I've never had someone say to me that you need to work on your personal brand. And I don't want this to sound like big-headed or anything, but I've always had people tell me that I've got a good personal brand. But like I said earlier, I don't necessarily feel like I did that intentionally. I always remember a time when I was an assistant manager, just sat at my desk, just going about my daily jobs. And a branch manager at the time called me and asked if I was going to apply for a branch manager role. And I was like, no way. And he was like, well, why not? Like, everyone sees you as the next branch manager. And that's when you kind of think, well, like, I don't see myself as that, but other people do. For whatever reason, I must be doing something right. I guess that was kind of like the first time I was maybe really aware of it, but never had a situation so far where I've been told that I need to work on that. But similar to what Holly said, I am also quite fiery. So I've had someone tell me, you know, sometimes I need to rein it in a little bit, but that's kind of it really.
I've got 2 images of you two being these little balls of fire in the office in the branches. I encourage questions, and all I can see is our little Q&A chat box in 21. The questions are going up. So, Sophie, if you'd like to ask one of the questions.
Yes, of course. So we've got a question that says, how did you approach leading a group of people that may be older as graduates? So someone that might have had maybe more experience than you in certain work experiences.
I'll answer that only because I've just had a similar situation when I first got promoted to area manager. I then had to manage a branch manager who had been here twice as long as I have and was quite a bit older than me. And I'm not going to lie, it was, I went into that situation kind of, I didn't go, and I've learned from this, but I didn't go into that situation being myself. I tried to more befriend that person rather than go in and manage that person. And for a long time, it didn't work. And I've learned now to tell myself that regardless of age, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I was promoted on my basis of my experience and my performance, and that person, or even me, I don't feel like I believed in myself enough that I'm able to tell someone who's been here twice as long as I have, or who's sort of like 10 years older than me what to do. And now, again, if I was to do that all over again, I would approach the situation completely different, because it really doesn't matter on how old somebody is. You get your job because you're the best person for the job, regardless of age. So the only advice I'd give is try to take the age out of it and your qualities of you and why you've got that job. And if you're given a job to lead people, regardless of age, gender, or whatever, that it really doesn't matter. Just kind of try and take that out of it.
Fantastic. I have seen a question pop up, and the question is, and it's not targeted to anybody, but how would you say is the best way to develop your personal brand without losing your personal sense of identity?
I think it's a lot about reaching out to people. I think it's not about changing who you are. I know I've kind of spoken and said that sometimes I have to rein in kind of who I am naturally as a person, but I think once you build relationships and you get to know people as well, and they kind of get to know you on, it doesn't always necessarily have to be on a work level. Sometimes those conversations you have with someone over a coffee or a lunch, just about, what you've been up to at the weekend, you kind of build a common ground. They get to know and understand who you are as a person, not just Holly Penfold, the branch manager or the area manager that, only cares about the service or this and that. And I think that shows what you would be like as a manager as well. Those relationships you forge, anything that you do outside of work, sports teams that you play in, drama clubs or things like that you do, it all kind of rounds your personality. So I definitely think just reaching out to people and having conversations and getting to know them and letting them get to know you. Don't try and put, as kind of Chanel said about putting this front on and being somebody else, because I think when you try to be somebody else, you always get found out.
Good. Chanel, do you have anything to add to that one?
Not really, just similar to what Holly said. You should never need to change yourself. There might be things that you need to work on. I think especially when you first start or when you graduate, obviously people are generally 21, 22, 23, and you're still quite young, and you've obviously got a lot of maturing to do. And I 100% am not the same person as what I am when I started at 22, but you kind of just grow with your journey. So you definitely should never change yourself, but I think always take advice from people if they say, just similar to what me and Holly said there. Like Holly said, you can't necessarily always be aggressive all the time and stuff. And fun fact is, Sophie actually used to work for me, and I remember a time when I asked them all to describe me in 3 words, and Sophie wasn't one of these people, but Hitler and the devil came up quite a lot. Now, I know that was a joke, obviously, but for me, that was, I know that's because I am very direct and straightforward, and obviously they were joking, but that kind of, they see me as being like very direct and not necessarily aggressive, but for me, that just makes me, that just fuels me to carry on going. And I don't necessarily think that was me having bad, well, I know it definitely wasn't me having bad personal brand, but that was just how they perceived me. So I did obviously have to go away and reflect and think, I'm not going to change myself completely, but I don't want people saying those kind of things. So just a little bit of self-reflection and just taking the advice.
And that might answer my next question or lead on to my next question quite nicely, I suppose. My question's gone. Is there anything particular that you've done to shape your management style?
I think for me, and this was something that I kind of learned when I became a branch manager, is that you can't manage everyone the same. And I think that's really important. You can't have the same management style for everyone. I've got a team of 40 people and 6 branch managers, and I won't manage one of those branch managers exactly the same because it wouldn't work. Some people don't respond to direct management. Everyone responds differently. And I think understanding the team that you've got and what makes them tick and how they respond best to you is, for me, that's what I've found has been the most effective way of managing. Whereas if you've only got one management style, again, when you become a branch manager and you suddenly have a team of maybe 5-6 people and you become an area manager and you've got a team of 40 people, just being one way of management is never going to work. So it's just adapting to your team so that you can get the best out of them.
Yeah, just to jump on the back of that, I think asking your team how they be managed is never, I think sometimes we're really scared to ask people how they want us to do something or how they want us to manage them because we are the manager, so we should know that. But I think having those open conversations with your team, I've got one of my branch managers, when she does something wrong, I don't need to tell her because she's already kicking herself 10 times for it. Whereas one of my other managers, he kind of needs to be told how badly he's messed up on it. So it's just about having that communication line with them and asking them, you know, what will motivate you, what will help me get the best out of you.
I have a question. If promotions within enterprise tend to happen very fast, how do you know when you're ready for that promotion?
I think a lot of the time it's, as Chanel said, people will ring you and kind of, how are you going for this? I think, you know, sometimes women are kind of pigeonholed into this, or, you know, they'll see a job advert and a man will tick off 8 out of 10 things and think he'll apply, whereas a woman will be like, oh no, I don't have those too. Whereas I kind of didn't really fall into that. I was always willing to be like, yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'll do it. And I was just kind of chomping at the bit to get that next promotion. And I'd say you should always kind of have clear career conversations with your boss. So you should always know where you're at, and you should always know if an opportunity comes up, you would be considered for it. But I always think put your name in the hat, because the worst that can happen is you don't get that position, but you get some feedback that will lead to you maybe getting the next one, or you get more exposure because you might interview with people you've not met before, and then you're a consideration for the next role.
I'm going to do one more from here, and then we've got one final one. And then, as we said earlier, we will be going through and answering all these questions and getting back to you over the course of the upcoming weeks. So it is, who are the top personal brands that inspire you and why?
I know mine is Claire, who can't be here today, who is another area manager on our team. She is mine because she has always been a person that she was my area manager when I was a branch manager, and she will always be herself. And she's sometimes had criticism in the past for, again, just similar to what me and Holly have said, but being too direct, or just being very blunt about the situation. And she's never changed, and no matter where she goes, she always delivers the results. But the main thing about Claire is that she cares about a team so much. And for me, like, I just always look up to Claire. Like, she's always constantly got time for you, and I know that if anyone was to go to her, they would know that about her. And everyone knows that Claire, her main priority is her people. She cares so much about her people, and for me, that's how I would want to be perceived, because we can talk about performance and all of that, but without your team, you're never going to get that. And Claire starts from the bottom and works the way up, whereas a lot of people start from the top and then let the message filter down. And for me, she's always been there throughout my career, and he's always someone that, even now we're doing the same job, she's a lot more experienced than me, and she's just always someone that I look up to. Like, she works so hard, and you would never ever know about stuff that she's got going on in her own life, because she'll just never put her burden on someone else, but she takes on a lot of people. So she's definitely mine.
I think I could probably go, you've got the typical answer celebrity ones. You can look at Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, some of the people that we saw in the poll earlier, but kind of similar. I think it's difficult to fully look up to them when they do something so different. So probably similar to Shana, which is probably a bit annoying for some of you listening, so I apologise. It's probably, again, internal. I've had bosses in the past, a GM, Zach Gill, who he came into our group sort of halfway through, just took over from somebody else, and the shake-up and the direction that he really put into the group, and he really made sure that every employee understood the why. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it important? And really made sure that every employee felt valued, but also not only valued, but proud to work for Enterprise as a company, but also for that group and work for him. And I just think building a culture like that, where, people are really bought into the why and they feel proud to work for you, I think that's something that I'll take with me through my career.
I did have one final question, and there was me thinking we'd have problems with questions, but it's, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I think someone mentioned this on an earlier panel as well, and I was only thinking it before I started this, but 1,000,000%, try not to get too caught up on the plan that you think you might have in your head. I know obviously a lot of people right now are doing degrees, and I was the same. I went to uni and did journalism and got to the end and was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And I didn't really get like freaked out about it. I just kind of took the opportunities that came my way. And again, similar to what I said earlier on, no one goes to uni and thinks, I want to graduate and go to enterprise and rent cars. No one thinks like that. And I'm very aware of that situation, but the opportunities that it can give you is what I've seen. And had I not been open to that, I don't think I would have ever started here, and I wouldn't have the life that I have now had I not done that. And I think obviously a lot of people on this event right now are going to be in that same situation, and it's okay if you don't want to do that anymore. And it's okay to not really know and just take the opportunities. The more that you do, the more skills that you'll gain. And I think someone said it earlier, like, you might do something that's not going to be forever, but you'll definitely take something from that. So just being open to every opportunity that comes your way, whether you think it fits in with your plan or not, because my plan didn't go to plan. But everything happens for a reason. So just kind of not giving yourself such a hard time if the course that you chose 3 years ago is not the route that you want to go down anymore, because I think over 50% of people will be in the same position.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think kind of similar to what Chanel said, being open and being flexible, I think, are really important. Exactly what Chanel said, you know, I wasn't a little girl 5 years old dreaming of renting cars for a living. That's definitely not where I saw my life going. But you know, I've relocated twice now for this for the company as well, for the position that I'm in. And I think you've just got to remember, when you make a decision or when you're doing things, the one question that I would always look back and want to ask myself now is, will my future self thank me? You know, is the brand I'm building and the decisions I'm making, are these things that are a short-term decision for now, or is this something that, you know, 26, 27, 28-year-old Holly's really going to look back and thank me for?
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Ladies, thank you for answering the question. That was really interesting to listen to you, how you've overcome some challenges and what measures you've adapted and put into place, and that you've put into place, God, getting tongue twisted, that you've put into place to help you be successful. And then as I was listening to you and reflecting back on what Sophie had said earlier, I suppose my one takeaway is really understand the concept of pie and why it's important for us to grow and be successful in the careers we want. It's almost like we're starting off with this giant blank canvas, and we can begin to paint a picture we desire. Before handing it over to Sophie, I'd like to say thank you to each of our panel members for sharing their personal experience and nuggets of advice, which I'm sure the audience have really found beneficial.
Yeah, thanks, Raj, and thank you so much to Holly and Chanel as well for tackling some of those questions. It's great to see how many questions were asked as well. There's still 36 in that chat box that we promise we're going to keep the conversation going online, and we will tackle some of those questions that we've not got around to as well. It's great to see how, Holly and Chanel, you've managed to use the elements of pie to accelerate your career as well. And I'm actually intrigued now to see what our audience thinks. So we're going to go over to a poll. What aspects of pie has the biggest impact on your personal brand, in your opinion? So going back to performance, image and exposure, what do you think is the biggest impact on your personal brand? The poll's up on the screen now, so you just need to put your answer in and press submit, and then we'll see everybody's answers. So we'll give it 30 seconds, hopefully. Raj, I don't know if you can see that poll. I can't currently because I'm sharing a screen, but if you could share the poll results when they are when they come through, that would be fantastic.
I am waiting for them to come through.
I don't actually know where that poll's disappeared to. So
I'm hoping somebody's just going to come in and give us the poll results, and we're going to be like, that was all planned.
No, so it's disappeared.
So the poll results I can share with you are performance came in with 38%, image 33%, and exposure 29%.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's actually quite a close call, really, with kind of an even split of ideas there. So that's really interesting. And we're now going to go, I'm going to show you how Harvey Coleman, who wrote about pie originally, split these elements up into different percentages towards your success. So this might surprise you. According to Coleman, performance only actually accounts for 10% of your success. And I noticed on the chat function before, someone mentioned the fact that performance really shouldn't be the be all and end all, and it is really, really not. So performance might sound really low, 10%, but imagine the situation where there are several people going for a promotion. They will have all been through the same interview process to get the role in the first place and held on to the roles that they currently have by providing their performance capabilities within the team. Therefore, the box is pretty much already ticked for performance. So when the committee that decides who gets promoted sits down, they'll assume that people being suggested and put forward for that role are already performing well in their roles. So this brings us to the other 90%. So in this model, a gigantic 60% of career progression is based upon the exposure element. So when the committee hears your name being put forward, the individuals will search their mind for what they know about you, if that's anything at all. If they know nothing about you, i.e. they've had no exposure to you, then your chances of promotion are likely to be slimmer because they'll know a lot less about you than, say, the other candidates interviewing for the same role. So assuming that they have had some exposure to you, then this links to the final 30%, which is image. What has been their perception when they first met you and interacted with you? Do they perceive that you can take the next step up and do well in that role? And what is their experience of you interacting with others as well as your literal image as well, in the way you present yourself, the way you dress, your demeanor and things like that we spoke about before. So that actually brings us to the end of Pi. I really hope you've found that useful. I certainly did when I was introduced to Pi back when I was a trainee manager, and I've been using that ever since to elevate my own career as well. So I'm going to hand you back over to Raj now, who will take us through the last part of our session.
Absolutely. So the last part of our session is where I would like for you to take a couple of minutes to reflect on how you perceive your personal brand. Now, in the chat box, I would love for you to type 3 words to identify how you are described today. So that could be shy, quiet, knowledgeable. And then secondly, how would you like to be described? And that could be confident, outgoing, leader. Now, some of the words may already align with how you are described, which is great, but at the same time, it will be interesting to see whether there are skills that you can develop. So if we can start typing away in the chat box and let's see what pops up.
Oh, I can see some really good words coming through, Raj. Approachable, outgoing, bubbly, vocal, determined, empathetic, supportive, striving for the best, resilient, compassionate, ambitious, authentic. There's so many brilliant words coming through. I don't know if you can see them as well, Raj, but it'll be interesting to see how we can align these words to what we think about ourselves now and what we want to be perceived as well.
Exactly. And I know it's always difficult to do a personal reflection, and it's hard. You sit back and you think, oh, how do I wish to be described? Or how am I today? However, this will take you and make you one step closer to the success that you want. So what we're going to do with all these words and reflections is create a word cloud, and that will be sent to you as part of your toolkit. Now, the second part is where I'm going to give you some follow-up work. I would like for you to set a reminder 30 days from now to connect with us via any one of our social media platforms using the hashtag Breaking Barriers 2021 and share with us your biggest opportunity. And I suppose most importantly, what one action will you implement to help you excel in your area of opportunity to achieve your goal? And who knows, maybe in 30 days, you've already achieved your goal. We will have to wait and see. With that said, we've come to the end of our session. Myself and Sophie hope you've enjoyed the session and got lots of takeaways to kickstart your future. Now you have a 10-minute break to go and grab yourself a drink, tea, coffee, and please be back prompt for a 5:40 start, where we will have 2 sessions taking place. In the main room, we have Helen Cook, CEO and founder of MyPlus, discussing how to turn the spotlight on the skills and strengths your disability can bring. And in the side room, the link will be in the chat. We will have Student Minds, Business in the Community, Keep Happy, discuss questions around mental well-being.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
They call us the change makers, the mould breakers, the innovators and the risk takers. We're the students with a drive through social enterprise to build a world that thrives and impact thousands of lives. We're the future business leaders, showing the world why they need us, making our graduate futures side by side with our supporters. We're in this boat together, post-grads right through to freshers. The friends you make at uni are your family, forever. In universities across the land, we're there to give a helping hand. To make our community stronger, we won't sit back any longer. Our future is what we make it, so join us to create it. With a head for business and a heart for the world, we are Enactors. Are you?
Hi there, everyone, and welcome back to our final session of this late afternoon or early evening. Really excited to introduce somebody that I think I've probably introduced before on a couple of occasions at events, Helen Cook, who I've known now for a few years as well. And a little known fact is we both went to the same university. And we're both energy angels as well. And this session called Standing Out for the Right Reasons is being headed up and led today by Helen Cook, who is CEO and founder of MyPlus, does some amazing work in her field. So please check out her website and social channels and find out some more about Helen and some of the things that she does. And she is going to be turning the spotlight on the skills and strengths your disability can bring. So again, Helen, thank you so much for joining today. And we're really excited and looking forward to your session. And over to you.
Thanks, Ash. I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you and everybody here this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to running this session as well. So as Ash said, my name's Helen Cook and I'm the CEO of MyPlus. And our mission is to ensure that having a disability doesn't prevent anyone from having the career that they want to have. And for the last 15 years, we've worked with employers, students and universities to make that a reality. And it's something that, as a wheelchair user, I'm particularly passionate about, as I've been fortunate enough to have had a very enjoyable career. So for the next hour, we're going to focus on the positives that having a disability can bring in terms of the skills and strengths and how we can positively position those with employers so that we stand out for the right reasons. And I'm delighted that I'm going to be joined by a number of people who are also going to talk about share their insights and expertise as well. So some people think that having a disability will hold them back. We tend to think about the things that you can't do or can no longer do or find difficult to do. But I think that that's a load of rubbish. And I believe that if you want to do something, you can. It might be challenging. However, it's all about finding your way around these. And I want to start by looking at just that. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I want to start by showing the Paralympic video from 2016. And as you watch this, I want you to, have a look at how people found a way around their disability to do the things that they wanted to do. I'm talking about playing the drums with your feet, playing sport in a wheelchair, picking up your baby when you haven't got any arms, or tap dancing with just one leg. So let's just start by having a look at this.
Yes, I can, certainly. Yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. 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 No, you can't. I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can find you in Everest. Yes, I can.
Stop music. I would love to tell you that I was that person at the end of that video, but I'm not. So, let me just share my screen with you. So, just bear with me. There we go. So, as I said, I mean, what that video showed was just what people can do if they really set their mind to it. So in terms of what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be looking at disability in the workplace. And actually, as I said, how do we position our disability positively? So we're going to start by looking at it from an employer's perspective. Why do they ask this question that we sometimes see on application forms? We're going to hear some insights from people at Enterprise, starting with Ramina. We're going to look at this thorny subject of disclosure and what are our concerns about being open about our disability. And we're also going to explore the benefits of being open and how we can do that. We're also going to then hear from Ben, another Enterprise employee, talking about his experiences, and then finishing off about how do we positively position your disability. And I'm going to be joined by Karen Coney from John Moore, Liverpool University. Now, some of you on this call will have disabilities, and some of you won't. Some of you may know people. Some of you may just be interested, and that's absolutely brilliant, not least that you are the future leaders of tomorrow, and it's going to be, you know, up to people like you that's going to make a difference in the workplace, whether that's bringing in people or gender equality or indeed around disability equality. So absolutely chuffed a bit that you've joined us. So we're going to go through quite a lot today, and as Ash said, loads and loads of information, all freely available on our Students Club website, including lots of information about Enterprise and their approach to disability and the support that they offer. So do go and have a look at that once we finish today. So I thought it was just worth starting by reminding ourselves, what are we talking about when we talk about disability? It's a term that is an umbrella term for many, many conditions. Some are hidden, many are hidden, some are visible. Includes sensory, mobility, mental health, learning, developmental, progressive conditions. So I just thought it'd be worth sharing the legal definition. And this is the definition that was in the Disability Discrimination Act, now the Equality Act. And it says that a person has a disability if they have a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. Now, I think that that's quite a narrow definition because we're talking about physical or mental. And hence I wanted to share another definition that many of my clients use, which talks about people with a physical, mental, intellectual, sensory difference, condition or impairment, which may impact their full participation and inclusion in society on an equal basis with others. Now, either way, I think those terms are quite ambiguous, they're quite fluffy. And I think that, first of all, disability is a very harsh label. We don't always want to identify with that disability. I remember, you know, it's not how I go around defining myself. First of all, I'm Helen. As I said, I'm a founder of a company. I'm a wife, a stepmom, a sister, a daughter, I'm a friend. I'm lots of things before I would describe myself as disabled. I think also that how our disability, is it our disability that impacts our ability to participate in society, or is it the societal barriers that are erected? And I also think we have to remember that we all manage our disability differently, and therefore it has a different impact on whether we can participate in society. So you may meet two wheelchair users, or two people with a visual impairment, or two people with dyslexia, and their abilities and strengths are very different because of when they were diagnosed, when they became disabled, the support they've had, and so on. And here are just a very few conditions. Now, when I've shown this on webinars before that we run for students, people start putting in the chat box, I have this is the disability. And I'm not going to go through that today because the list is too long. And I guess, you know, if you are asking yourself a question, you know, it's about, you know, does it impact my full participation in society? So now that we've provided a little bit of context around you know, what a disability is, let's move on to think about, you know, why does an employer ask you about this? So it's not surprising that we're quite concerned about sharing information around a disability or a health condition or poor mental health, because it's very personal information. Well, actually, we don't know the employer at this point. We're only making that application in. And we're going to be reluctant to provide that information if we don't know why it's being asked for. So I thought we'd start by a poll question. And I don't know whether Claire's on this or Nicole's on this to put the poll question in. Are you able to do that for me? Yes, we have. Fantastic. So our first poll that we've got before we move on to look at why employers are asking this question is, what percentage of students in UK universities have a disability? So if you want to select your answer, let's see what you're thinking. Is it 8%, 10.5%, 12%, 14 or 18%? Oh, it's quite close in some places. 18% is come out at top. It's actually 14%. It's 14%, not quite as high as 18, but 14% is still a really high figure. It's 1 in 7 of students have a disability in UK universities, an incredibly high figure. So it's very easy to think you're the only one, but in the nicest possible way, you're not. Always say you're not that special. But why does an employer ask that question? Well, very simply, it's because they want to level the playing field when it comes to the recruitment process. They want to ensure that nobody's at an advantage, but equally, no one's at a disadvantage. And I love this graphic here and this quote from Albert Einstein that says, "Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid." So it's about leveling the playing field and giving everybody the same opportunity, or a fair opportunity. It's about ensuring that you as the candidate can perform to the best of your ability. And then once that adjustment's in place, that change has been made to the process, that support's there for you, you will then be assessed on an equal basis to your peers, and that's the responsibility of the employer. So what does the employer ask? Well, there's two things that the employer may ask. First of all, on the application form, they may ask, what support do you require? And I said that's about ensuring that they know what it is that you need so that you can demonstrate your potential, because otherwise you're potentially going to hit a barrier. You might not have enough time, the font might not be large enough, you may not have an interpreter in place for you, and therefore you're going to be rejected for a role that you're capable of doing. And they ask you that to ensure that their process is inclusive. Now, what they may also send you is an equal opportunities form, and that's the form where they ask you, do you have a disability? And at that point, it's about understanding the diversity of their employee population. They want to understand if they're inclusive, if their policies and processes are fit for purpose. And they ask you for reporting reasons. Now, that information is totally confidential. It doesn't go to the recruiters, it doesn't go to the hiring managers. And I think Karen's going to talk about this in a minute, is that if you put on an equal opportunities form, yes, you have a disability, that won't be sufficient to put your adjustments in place, because as I said, it doesn't go to the recruitment team. You have to ask for that information separately to that. So how is the information used that you share? Well, I think it's really, really important, first of all, to remember that it is confidential. As I said, it's only shared outside of the graduate recruitment team if you give permission. So this is about the adjustments. It's not shared with hiring managers, and it's not shared with other candidates. So if you're somebody who had 25% extra time, or if you shared that you experience anxiety and may need rest breaks, no one else is going to know that other than the person that you've been talking to in the recruitment team. It's not their role to pass that on, unless you've said, actually, I'd like that information to be shared. It's certainly not used to assess you for the suitability for the role. It won't be used to provide support for you if you're successful. That will be another conversation. But it may be used for reporting purposes. Again, your name won't be attached to it, but what companies tend to do is have a look at actually how many applicants do we have that require support, how many people go through the process, how many offers do we make, how many people accept those offers. So it may be used for reporting purposes, but that's all confidential and used within, reported in line with data privacy. So that's a little bit about why employers ask me in the nicest possible way. They're not really interested in the ins and outs of your disability. They're not medics. What they want to do is they want to know how to support you. And I'd just like to invite both Nicole from Enterprise and Karen to come in now. I think you're going to turn your cameras on. And Nicole, if we could perhaps start with you to sort of just say a little bit more from an Enterprise perspective and why you asked the question and how that information is used.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I think, just to go through the interview process, first of all, at Enterprise, just a run through it, and we will ask you to complete an online application. From there, if you're successful, we'll invite you to phone screen. Following from that, you would be invited to a virtual interview with someone from the recruitment team. And if you're successful at that stage, then we invite you to do a branch interview where you get to meet the team face to face. So at every stage of that interview process, we will ask you if you need support. And I can't encourage you enough to take us up on that offer, because it's only going to benefit you. And another thing I think is really important, Helen, you mentioned we're not medics, we're working on a recruitment team. You are the expert in your disability. So it's actually better, even if you are a bit shy and hesitant about disclosing your disability, it's in your best interest to do that, because it will help you come through the process with us, and we will allow you to avail of those supports or even adjustments through the interview process. And I think you're only going to benefit yourself if you tell us. And another thing is it's in our best interest for you to get the job as well. Us as a recruitment team, we really want to bring forward the best talent. So the more you tell us about the support or adjustments you need, the better you'll do in the process.
That's lovely, Nicole. Thank you. Really good advice there. And Karen, would you like to come in here as well?
Yes, and just really to agree. First of all, Helen, with what you were saying, I do speak to students in my role as a careers advisor who think they have disclosed to an employer, but actually what it turns out is that they've completed that equal ops form that you mentioned as part of the recruitment process, and they've then expected that everyone that they then meet in that sort of employer organization then knows. So it's very helpful to note that isn't necessarily passed on. And secondly, to echo sort of what Nicole was saying, actually, that it's helpful to just understand that employers they're usually really eager to support you, but they don't necessarily know anything or very much about your disability or health conditions. So you are the expert, and it's really helpful if you can then articulate sort of how it's going to affect you and what you need. And that will help an employer. So they do need guidance from you. And you may be sat there thinking, actually, I don't know exactly what I will need in the workplace. I've not been in that particular environment. And that is something definitely to to do what you can to find out. So what I'm often encouraging students to do is seek relevant voluntary work, get some sort of part-time work, some summer work, placements, take the opportunity to kind of get experience, because during those times you will then sort of start to learn what it is that's going to be helpful for you in the workplace in terms of adjustments that will be needed. But I'm going to be saying, encouraging you to seek support later on, but that's something else. You're not on your own doing this either, but we'll come back to that later.
Thank you. And I think it's interesting, both Nicole and Karen said the same thing, which is about you've got to become an expert in what you require. It's not always easy, but I think we all encourage you to do that. So thank you. And before we now move on to talk about a bit more about some disclosure and openness, I would like to invite Romina to join us now, who is going to share her first-hand experience of disability and life at Enterprise. Romina, over to you.
Thanks so much, Helen. So hi everybody, my name is Romina. I have been with Enterprise for 3 years now. I'm currently an account supervisor for them, and that's after having worked my way up through the ranks. I did start on the graduate program just like everybody else. First of all, let's just take note that graduating is a very stressful time for everybody. I only finished college a few years ago, so I remember very well how stressful of a time it was to start making big life decisions and start looking into a career path. So I definitely sympathize with everyone there. For me, though, it was a bit more tricky. You know, it's a stressful time as it is, but if we try adding into the fact that I am a woman and I am a woman with a disability, at that, things for me, time seemed a lot more complicated. To give you a bit of background, I am a full-time wheelchair user. I have been most of my life, following an accident when I was 3 and I broke my back. So to me, it was all I'd ever really known. And growing up, just given the support system that I had both at home and in schools, I never realized that I was different. It wasn't until I got into college and I started looking at careers that I realized that, you know, things weren't going to be as easy as I had really thought they were. And that kind of all started back when I was in school and looking into colleges. You know, the thought of careers came up and what degree I wanted to do and what path I wanted to go down. And that kind of changed throughout the years. So I actually ended up studying finance in college, and very early on realized that I didn't really like finance, as a lot of people do halfway through their degrees, and switched majors then. And I ended up finishing that degree in finance and doing a master's in sociology. So following that, I kind of started looking at where I wanted my career to go. And one thing for me was I knew I didn't want to be stuck behind a computer. I'm very much a people person. I like interacting with people. So I wanted a job where I could do that. So, you know, sitting in a cubicle in an office doing 9 to 5, I just knew would never suit me. The problem that I found with that was that if you're not behind a computer desk, you are out there representing the company that you're working for, and you are the face of the company. And, you know, we have the hashtag today choose to challenge. What I found, and unknowingly at the time, was I challenged the perception of what the face of a company should be. You know, when we look at companies, what we think of initially is a middle-aged white man in a suit. That's who's out there representing companies. And it got me thinking that I couldn't, to be quite honest. But as I kind of went through it, I started challenging that. And I started thinking, well, why couldn't I? Why couldn't, you know, an Asian woman be representing the company? Why couldn't a woman in a wheelchair be the face of the company that's out there and put out to the public? And, you know, that kind of, all those thoughts kind of led me to want to progress and want to be successful in my career, but I wanted a chance. So as Helen was talking, sometimes people don't always disclose on their CVs or in their applications. And unfortunately, I was one of those people. If I could turn back time, you know, I've grown a lot since then and I've changed how I look at things. I probably would disclose it because I think it would have made the application process a lot easier for me. But I was one of those people that didn't disclose it on their CV. And back then it was harder to, you know, keep that quiet because you had to do in-person interviews. Whereas now, I'm not saying you should, but you could get away with completely not disclosing that you have a very physical disability. Definitely don't suggest it though, and don't advise it. But for me, it was very much, I wanted to be judged on my academics and my experience, not the fact that I was in a wheelchair. And what I started seeing after, sending out multiple applications and CVs was that there was this pattern kind of emerging where I'd send in an application on my CV. They'd love my CV, love my experience, my education. I'd do the phone interview. Phone interviews would go great. They loved me. I loved them. We were a great match. And then the in-person interview would happen. And many a times I would get to the interview and I instantly could see it on their face that I just didn't have that job. And that was purely based on the fact that they saw the chair and just dismissed me off the bat. And I actually have a very funny, I would want to say, example of that, where I went in for an interview for a company. Role would suit me great. I definitely had the experience, had the background and education for it. But my interviewer spent almost an hour talking to me about this guy he knew that did adapted skiing. I was never asked about my education. I was never asked about my experience. And it really kind of drilled in the fact that this man just didn't see me as a viable candidate, even though I was ticking all the boxes he was looking for.
Sorry, Romina, I'm just going to have to stop you in about a minute.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. But eventually I ended up finding Enterprise, and the way I found it was that one of my friends applied and he actually ended up not getting the role, but I ended up getting into the program. And the one thing that really stood out to me was from the very get-go of the application, it was never, what obstacles do you have? What, how is this going to be difficult for you? My first interview was purely based on experience and academics. And it was only after my job offer came in that we kind of started looking at, okay, well, what kind of support do you need? I think the way that question is phrased to candidates makes all the difference. Be it, they need to know that you are there to offer them support, not to look at ways that they were going to be hindered. And for me, they were very small supports. They were ramps in branches and, having hand controls in for cars because it is a requirement of the job. And with the right support, I ended up progressing. And, having that support there from Enterprise meant that within my first year, I was promoted. 6 months after that, I ended up making assistant manager in one of our biggest branches. And then 8 months after that, I ended up in my current role. And earlier on, we were talking about sitting at the table, and it was actually Cheryl. Yeah.
I'm really conscious of time. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you just to finish off. We're really tight on time.
Yeah, no. I'll finish with this then, Helen. Earlier on, we were talking about sitting at the table. And when initially that quote was said by Sheryl Sandberg in her Forbes interview, it was about women sitting at the table with men. But I do think we need to emphasize that that quote can apply to any aspect. In whatever way you might be different, I think it's important for you to have the courage to get that seat at the table with the men or with the company that you want, and really believe in your skills and what you can bring to that table. And if you have a wheelchair, it's even easier because you don't need to find a spare seat. So but I think it's all about believing in yourself and the perception you have of yourself and putting that out there to your employers or your potential employers.
Romina, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off. We hopefully will have time at the end of the Q&A, but I am going to move on. But thank you very much. And as I said, hopefully we'll have time for the Q&A at the end.
Thanks so much, Helen.
Thank you. It's really, really good to hear from Romina and actually all of them about the whole sort of issues of support, and Romina talking there about disclosure, which brings us nicely on what we're going to talk about next. Now, we talked about sort of why an employer asks this question about, do you have a disability? So now let's think about, are you going to be open or not? And before you make that decision, I think we need to consider the benefits of that and indeed the consequences of not. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like this term disclosure. I think it makes it sound like we've got this terrible secret we're all keeping from each other. And therefore, I'm going to talk more about openness. I'm going to talk about sharing information or informing or telling people, as opposed to disclosing and declaration, which, as I said, I don't think is helpful. Now, I think if I asked you whether you were concerned about being open, I would expect that you would say that you were. And if you are, you'll have many reasons about why you don't want to be open with an employer. And I'm quite interested to hear what those questions, what those fears are. So we're going to go to our second question. And it says, why don't you want to tell an employer that you have a disability or health condition? Lots of reasons there: fear of discrimination, fear of judgment, being a hassle, afraid that you'll be seen as a weaker candidate, perhaps you don't need any adjustments, you don't know what you should share, or indeed all of the above. So again, if you want to submit your answers, why don't you want to be concerned? Why don't you want to share that information? Do we have the results of that coming in yet? I think that's really interesting. Gosh, interesting. 25% of you said all of the above. Concern that you'll be seen as a hassle, totally get it. You're asking for something that nobody else is asking for. And the one that really upsets me is that you're afraid that you're going to be seen as a weaker candidate. And that's why it's so important to be able to position our disability positively, which is what we're going to come on to. But not surprisingly, 76% of students don't want to be open about their disability. That's a figure that we found out when we did some research a few years ago, and that's an awful lot of fear. And the reasons that people don't want to be open are many and varied. All of the ones that are coming up, and many more as well. A lot of you said, I don't want to cause a fuss or a hassle. It's very easy to think you're the only one asking for something that's different. But let's go back to that 14%, 1 in 7 people have a disability and will be asking for support. And again, being afraid about how you're going to be perceived and the judgments. Now, I always say it's not for me to tell you whether to be open or not. That's not my role. But before you decide, and some people say to me, I don't want to be open about my disability, but you're not going to be open, I think it's important that we understand both the benefits of being open and equally the consequences that aren't. So at least you're making an informed decision. So what are the benefits? What are the benefits of being open with an employer about your disability, about the fact that you need support? Well, the big one for me is you can request the adjustments that you need. Otherwise, as I said, potentially you're going to hit a barrier in that process and be rejected. Obviously, your relationship with a potential employer is open and honest from the beginning, and that's what we all want. It allows you to demonstrate your full potential. You can draw on your disability to demonstrate your skills and competencies. For example, if it's a hidden disability, let's say you've experienced anxiety and depression. Let's say you had a period of poor mental health. There's a hell of a lot of resilience that you will have developed to have dealt with your situation. There's an awful lot of determination to get back on your feet, and indeed tenacity to be applying for jobs. And actually we can talk about those and bring in examples that are unique to us and our disability if we're being open. I think if you choose to be open, you can control, you can manage what it is you say and how you say it and when you say it, because if not, sometimes we all say things, don't we? When we don't mean to say it. Oh, I didn't mean to say it like that. Or I didn't mean to tell you then. And actually, if we choose to be open, we're much more in control. And the last one for me is about being your authentic self, about not hiding any part of you. And that was something that Hayley Bennett talked about as our opening speaker today, and the importance of that. So those are the benefits of being open, and the consequences of not, I guess, polar opposite of that. You may lack the support adjustments you need, and therefore you're potentially going to be filtered out of that process quite early. You could cause unnecessary disruptions in the process. So actually, if you have a late request for adjustments, you may delay or cause your interview or assessment to be postponed. And actually, your lack of planning may reflect poorly on you, particularly if that employer has given you, as Nicole said, every opportunity to be open. And potentially it could impact your relationship with an employer negatively, again, by not sharing that information and asking for what you need up front. as I said, it's not for me to tell you what to do. Personally, I would always be open if I needed support or adjustments. I might not put it on my CV because is it relevant? No, it's not. But I would always be open before I got to the interview, because I think personally, I think sometimes disability isn't what an interviewer is expecting, and we can take them off by surprise, and suddenly they're concentrating on us rather than interviewing us for the job. So I am going to stop there again, and I'm going to hand over to Ben. So Ben is another employee of at Enterprise, and he's also going to share his experiences of disability and working at Enterprise. So Ben, over to you.
Real, thanks, Helen. Yeah, so I'm Ben. I work at Enterprise as an assistant branch manager. I've been in the company since June 2018, and I've been an assistant branch manager for 18 months now. A little bit about me. I just moved into my own place, got engaged, and found out I've got a baby on the way in very, very quick succession. So it's been an exciting 12 months and hopefully only going to improve. Now, I fall into the category of invisible disabilities. My disability does become visible, but not all the time. So I've got a bone condition in my legs called Perthes disease, which is a femoral head condition, which basically the bone dies and disintegrates. Now that's been going on since I was 5 years old. So that's constantly been a part of my life. I've adapted to it, my family have adapted to it, so on and so forth. Work-wise, I've declared it always, absolutely all the time. So whenever it says, have you got any disabilities? I always tick yes. The proof that the company don't even know about that, from what obviously was being said earlier, that it's not disclosed to the company, it is for data. No one ever knows. So until something actually happens where I need to speak to them about it, no one's aware of what's going on, what's happening, anything like that at all. It all came to a head again recently this year when I ended up going to hospital and having scans done. Felt a bit of pain in my hip and my pelvis, and it turns out that the arthritis has disintegrated my joint basically. So I'm now on the waiting list for a hip replacement. Scary at 25, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be a straightforward time, but at the same time, I count myself as lucky. I've had 20 years where the treatment they did has helped me and it's worked. And I've been able to live those 20 years in a good way. I've had a good time. I've done my Duke of Edinburgh Awards. I've gone to award evenings. I've done things with scouts. I've done days out, theme parks. Don't go on the rides because I'm scared of those, but that's irrelevant. So yeah, I've been really lucky and I've had a lot of things which I can do. You know, my gold Duke of Edinburgh, my silver, I actually did in my wheelchair because I had a bit of an episode where I couldn't actually walk. But that sort of brings on to the next point where they call it disabled, but I don't, because you're not disabled, you're differently abled. And there's always a way to get around the situation. So I sat in the doctor's room at my consultant and said, so this injection you're on about giving me to kill the pain and that kind of thing, if I have it, can I do my walk and do my Duke of Edinburgh? He said no. He said, if you go and do that walk, don't come back. And that hurt a lot. 12 months of hard work, dedication, training, and you can't do anything about it. Like, it just goes right in front of your office. But you find another way. We found a company down in the Forest of Dean who did it with other people and people who are also differently abled like myself. And you actually learn that as a team, I couldn't walk, but they weren't always necessarily mentally capable. So between us, we formed a unit and we became a team. And that was so great. Like, everything was fantastic. So in regards to Enterprise for myself, Enterprise didn't really know about my condition. They knew that I had a disability because I sort of spoke about it a little bit, but I never actually had to deal with it until this year. They've been fantastic. Absolutely incredible. I turned around to my area manager, explained what was going on, told my branch manager, great reaction. They just said, anything you need, just let us know. But from my point of view, because I'm still doing everything as normal, I didn't need any adaptations at the moment. I just sort of said, look, right now, I'm having the scans, I don't really know, but I may need a period in the end where I'm working from home. Other than that, I'll be here. I might be struggling to drive, I might be struggling to wash cars and go in the wash bay and go outside and serve customers and so on and so forth. But I'll be here. I'll do my job. I'll be here 9 till 5. I'll do everything I need to do. Sorry, 8 till 5. We don't open at 9, we open at 8. But yeah, so I'm there every single day, open up, locking up, everything. But it's just about how you view your disability and making sure that you view it positively and take it as almost like a gift, because you've learned, like Helen was saying, a different way to do things, and your resilience and your determination and tenacity and everything you learn helps you with every other aspect of life. I'll never forget the one story that I found out from when I was younger, when I was in a wheelchair, and we were in a shop. I think it might have actually been like Asda or Tesco or something like that. It was a supermarket. And the lady at the till turned around to my mum and said, does your son want a lollipop? Just because I can't walk doesn't mean I can't talk or speak or think. My mum actually turned around to him and said, ask him yourself. He's 8 years old, he can do what he wants. So yeah, I mean, I'll leave you with the thought again. You're not disabled, you're differently abled, and look at the positives you've learned and how much you can do to help other people. And you'll have so many stories and so many brilliant icebreakers that you can use at business meetings and companies, and everyone always starts with an icebreaker. So just remember your stories and make sure you use them to the best of your ability. And thank you.
And thank you so much. Some really powerful words there, some really powerful advice. I think you can see the comments that are coming in. Thank you very much, and congratulations as well. What a great year for you. And Ben's actually sort of brought us very nicely into the final formal session of this, where we're going to talk about positively positioning our disability. And I said at the beginning that, you know, I think that with disability, we often think about the things we can't do or can no longer do, rather than the skills and the strengths that having a disability brings, which is what Ben's just talked about. And I always say, I guess this is the very premise of what My Plus is about, is that I don't believe that I'm any more special than anyone else, but I do believe it's given me something extra, and that's the plus. And these are the skills and the strength that I've had to develop, like Ben has and like Romina has, to manage my disability on a day-to-day basis in a world that's not always geared up for it. So I've had to be determined to overcome barriers. I've had to problem solve to get around the daily challenges of access and lifts not working, to be able to communicate and be articulate, particularly when I'm asking people to do things that I can't do, and also those interpersonal skills, build those relationships. And I'm sure you'll agree that when we look at any job description, these are exactly the skills that employers are asking for. So I'm now delighted to hand over to Karen, and Karen's going to talk to you more about this. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my slides into presenter mode. Here we go. Hopefully that's fine. So yes, just a few bits about positively positioning your disability. And it's fantastic to be coming straight after Ben and Rowena, and just how they've done a fantastic job of doing that already. So just to pull some of it together, really. First of all, a question that I often get asked when I'm supporting students and graduates with disabilities. I quite liked what Ben said then about, I'm not sure about the term disability either, and I do prefer differently abled. I really like that. So what information should you share with an employer? Well, first of all, and this is what just to kind of confirm what we've already been alluding to, is just actually employers are just interested in getting the best person for the job. So focus on what is relevant for that job. What are they looking for? And kind of related to that is avoid, so most people wouldn't do this, but sometimes when there's a worry around your condition or disability, then it can end up mentioning or focusing on that rather than on the requirements for the job. Now, an employer tends to give you what they're looking for in what's called the person specification. So as well as the job description, which outlines what you might do, most of the time there's a person specification where they highlight exactly what skills, qualities, experience and education they're looking for. So this is the kind of what to use as your focus. And when it comes to actually, if you're mentioning your disability at any stage of the recruitment process, like Helen said, I think a CV, it normally wouldn't be there, but it might be in a covering letter or an application form or before an interview and so on. It is really helpful to kind of give suggestions as mentioned. But what I really, really want to focus on now is thinking about how your disability or health condition actually can enhance what you have to offer. And I really like these two quotes I'm going to share with you now. One of them, I got this online, it was at the CV store. Lee Tung had said, a disability shouldn't define you as a candidate, but instead help differentiate and possibly even promote you as a candidate. So this idea actually, just going on what Helen said as well, what have you got because of your disability? What qualities have you developed? What skills have been honed as you've been dealing with perhaps the challenges or whatever's been involved? And here's another quote by someone with cerebral palsy. Dear employer, I have a disability. It doesn't completely define me. It just enhances me in a way which differentiates me and strengthens me. My disability should be viewed as an ability to see the world in a different way. And I think increasingly employers are starting to recognize that this diversity and the viewpoints and the different strengths and skills that people with health conditions and disabilities can bring, they're really valuable for the workplace. But I think they still need pointing out. And this is where it is important to think, what do you have to offer? Now, skills and strengths are very similar. We tend to define skills as those things that you are good at and perhaps have developed over time, whereas strengths might be elements that you were born with as well. So they tend to be differentiated in that way, but are sometimes used interchangeably. But here are a couple of examples of people who have a disability and they've used it to define what skills and strengths they have. So I will read this out because it's quite a lot of writing. Having dyslexia has taught me to develop innovative organizational and time management skills to assist with my short-term memory recall and forward planning. In addition to the skills and qualities I've already outlined, my own experiences of dyslexia will enable me to empathize with dyslexic pupils, as well as providing students with a positive role model. So I've highlighted some of the key points there. And you'll notice that this student has actually said, well, in addition to all the other things where I didn't mention my disability, I also have these that are because of my disability. So it's kind of part of what you bring, but it brings you that additional kind of edge, something that makes you stand out. And here's another example. Because of my hearing loss, I've developed excellent levels of concentration. This has demonstrated my ability to analyze spreadsheets and make performance-related forecasts. I'm really pleased with the positive feedback I have received about these levels of focus in the workplace. So I would suggest that the next thing for you to do is to think, what do you have to offer because of your disability? So just in summary, it's really important you think, what is that employer looking for? They have given you all that you need to know in the person specification for a particular job. So think about how you meet each of the criteria. Some of the points will be nothing to do with your disability and will be based on the work experience you've gained, the degree you've studied, the volunteering you've done, or perhaps some natural kind of skills and strengths that you have. But some of them may be related to, that you've shown resilience, determination, and so on because of your disability. I would next say it's not enough just to kind of write it all down. It's really important to get used to saying it out loud. Most individuals need to practice, and I would say it's particularly helpful to do that so that when you do meet an employer, whether that's virtually or face-to-face, you are ready to talk about what you have to offer. And just to highlight, you are not here to do this on your own. You don't have to. it's really good to think about the support that you can get for sort of selling yourself and considering sort of how to describe your disability to employers. So Helen's already mentioned the MyPlus, where there's free support on her website. Definitely worth signing up with that. And also worth noting that there are, at every university in this country, there is a careers and employability centre or service, and they are eager to support you on a one-to-one basis, or you can engage with a lot of their other activities as part of groups. And many, or I would say almost all, would support graduates as well. So if you're a graduate listening to this, it's worth remembering that and getting in touch too. I'm going to stop sharing now and pass back to Helen.
Lovely, Karen. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. And just really interesting, listening to some of the things that you said, because I absolutely concur with them, and particularly when you talked about practice articulating your strengths. I think that writing that sort of strength statement and ending up with something that you're really happy with makes it much easier to share those skills and strengths in a way that you want to with an employer. So absolutely, sort of share that as much as possible. Now we are we have got time now to go into a Q&A, and I'm going to be joined by all of the people who have spoken. So Nicole, Karen, Romina, and Ben. So if you would, I don't think we've got any questions that have come in during this session, but if you do have any questions that you would like to put into the chat, then please do so now. We'll get through as many of those as possible. But I thought I was just interested to start off by asking Ben and Romina what support and adjustments they specifically had from Enterprise. If you could just briefly describe sort of what you've benefited from, that would be brilliant. So Ben, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I mean, as I explained, I'm lucky in the sense that a lot of the time at the moment I can manage it without any kind of adaptations. But I've got a risk assessment in place. We have to. It's in there that I can't drive certain vehicles, can't drive for long distances, can't be working in cold environments, can't go in certain areas because of trip hazards. So it's more the safety side from my point of view, and having that knowledge from managers and other like senior leadership that sometimes you need to get up and have a walk around. It's not because you're trying to avoid doing work, but it's because you're getting stiff and you can't actually sit any longer. But that's pretty much it for mine. Mine's quite straightforward.
Ben, I think we probably all could benefit from getting up and moving around a bit more, getting away from that screen. So good, thank you. Romina, what about yourself?
See, mine being a physical disability, there was a bit more kind of to it. So when I first started, it was kind of working out the local branch, which is where I was starting. It was putting in, new ramps, and there were small ramps. It was just more so to get over lift doors. We had automatic doors installed into the branch, just for ease more so than anything. We had hand controls brought in that would be moved from car to car in under 10 minutes. I have even moved them from car to car myself, so they're very easy to pop on and off of cars, which is handy because given the nature of the job, we do jump in and out of cars quite a lot. Then when I moved up to head office, there wasn't much adjustments there. The only thing I think we had was put in a fire plan for me. So I had an assigned person in case there ever was a fire, because we are on the first floor of a building. But that was kind of it for adjustments. They were all small things, but for a full-time wheelchair user, they were things that definitely made life easier and more practical.
Gosh, Romina, thank you. And total respect, I don't think I'd ever put hand controls on my car. I always leave that to the experts.
I'm a pro at this point.
Nicole, can I ask you, could you give us some other examples of the types of support that perhaps you put in place for applicants? I think it's very easy. We often know about extra time, but could you give us a couple of other examples of perhaps what you've done? So a bit more.
Yeah. One that springs to mind is I had a candidate that had a stutter, and when we done the face-to-face competency-based interview, he definitely struggled through the interview process, and those kind of competency-based questions just didn't suit him as a person. I just thought, I'm not trying to bring out the best in him. He got too nervous and couldn't answer the questions. So we changed the interview process and we made it more of a engagement shadow opportunity where we done role plays and judged him based off how he interacted with customers, how he interacted with the team, and hired him in the end, you know, and he done very, very well. And recently I've had another guy where the same disability, had got a stammer, and before doing the interview with myself, I gave him an idea of the questions that I would be asking him. But I think, again, going back to, you know, you need to be able to let us know how we can support you. So there are things that I came up with, you know, myself. But I think if you're going to think about your disability and how, you know, you're going to manage throughout the interview process and you come up with an idea, don't hesitate to say that idea to us. And we will definitely change up the interview process to bring out the best in you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. Karen, I'm going to come to you next with a question that's come in, and somebody's asking, Christian's asking, when it comes to my disability, I understand that I shouldn't necessarily focus on it during an interview, but anyway, to perhaps highlight some of the skills that come from, you know, his experiences. And I would say yes, absolutely, so long as we don't use our disability to answer every question in the same way that we would use our Duke of Edinburgh or our captain of a football team. But what would you say?
Yes, I would completely agree with that. I can see, Christian, that you've mentioned that that actually your disability enhanced many of your skills, and that is the bit that employers would really like to hear about. So how has it enhanced your skills, and in what way, and how is that relevant to the job? So when they ask questions, so for example, what will you bring to this job, you could highlight them and just in what way they would help. Particularly if you're familiar with the job description, you can tie in those skills to how it would enable you to do better in that particular role. So certainly I would say it will help you to stand out if you do answer you know, sort of one or even more than one question using how the depression has helped you in that way. But as Helen says, it's one of many things that you might bring. It isn't what you are all about. It's just something that would help you to stand out. And I'm sure there are other things as well. So it's getting that balance. But certainly yes is the answer. You can mention it, please. I think it would be a good thing too.
Thanks, Karen. Nicole, I'm going to finish off the last question to you. This is a really interesting one, which I'd love to ask all of you in the interest of time. This person is saying, I'm just curious to hear what employers think about in terms of candidates with disabilities. And you've asked about this person's, Catherine's asked about invisible. This person's been advised not to mention it because perhaps they'd be seen as unreliable or reduce their salary. Personally, I think that we should talk about it and use it as a strength. And equally, if an employer acts like that, then you know that you don't want to work for them. But what would you say? What would you say, Nicole?
Yeah, I think, you know, I do appreciate that there's a big anxiety around disclosing your disability, and I really do get that. But I can assure you, and I can't stress it enough, that you will benefit from telling us about your disability. And, you know, obviously I'm biased because I work for Enterprise, but everyone that I work with on the recruitment team, they're really, really nice people. And they're very approachable people. So they will be able to help you along the way. And for me, I'm just so passionate about hiring graduates with disabilities. And I really enjoy the process of, for example, making adjustments or offering additional supports. So for me, I know it's easier said than done, but I do think disclose and have a conversation. And then, you know, not that it will be forgotten about, but then we can move on from there after we've realized what kind of supports that you need. Does that answer the question, Helen?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is as we've all recognized today, a really difficult topic, and people's fears are very real. I'm going to have to finish off now, just in terms of time, but I hope that everybody has found that really interesting, and I would particularly like to thank our others that have spoken in this session, our panelists, so to Karen, Nicole, Ben, and Ramina. I really appreciate your insights. It's been really, really useful. Lots and lots of information, all freely available on the Students' Club website, including some career guidance ebooks around both disclosure and positioning your disability as positively. So please do have a look at those. So thank you again for your time, and I wish you all the best as you go forward.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Helen, for hosting that fantastic session. I've learned so much. I've made lots of notes, and yeah, it's just been really insightful. So thank you. I think it's been a really interesting session. And to Karen, Nicole, Ramina, and Ben, really appreciate you being part of this session this afternoon as we continue to work with Helen, and we do all we can to ensure we keep bringing on that diverse applicant pool, and also to our employees in the business today. So it's really lovely to hear from you. Okay, so we are coming towards the close of today's event. I cannot believe how quickly 4 hours can go. Honestly, it's just incredible. I'm now sitting in the dark with my light in front of me, so hopefully you can see me okay. I've just been blown away with the interaction from today's audience. Thank you so much for being part of today's session. Really appreciate your participation, all the chats, the questions. I did want to take this opportunity to remind you again of our competition today. This will close at midnight tonight, so there's still plenty of time for you to talk about maybe one takeaway that you've took from today's session, or any of the sessions today, or the panel event, or the keynote, and post that out there with your selfie, with that Choose to Challenge pose for International Women's Day. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, or multiple channels, we'd love to hear what you've taken away from today's session. Use those hashtags, and yes, let's continue to break barriers as we, and not just today, it's every day. But again, I think today has been fantastic to bring all of our fantastic guests together. There is a mailbox associated with today's event, so we'd love to hear from you post-event. Say hello at ehi.com, so please continue to send us messages. And of course, after today, we'll be sending across to you a resource toolkit, which will be unique to today's event that you will get. And that will hopefully give you some extra additional resources based on all the topics that we've covered today. So that's something that will be coming across to you very soon. Okay, so I just want to say thank you again. We're going to end the session today with a clip from International Women's Day 2021 theme, Choose to Challenge. Remember, challenge creates change, and that's what we're here to do. And until we really achieve gender parity, we will continue to work towards it, certainly at Enterprise and within our wider network. So thank you so much. Enjoy the video. It's very uplifting. I think I'm going to have a dance on my landing right now to it. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing your takeaways from today. Thank you.
The big question for you is, what will you choose to challenge? It's about saying,